get up.
Same.
Nice.
I tried to get her to go before I sat down, and she would not.
All right.
She's back in the bedroom sleeping, I think.
But I chose to start the stream at the right time.
Hell yeah.
Okay, good.
It's extremely on brand.
The people that get on right when we start streaming are Chris Edgerton and Eric's mother and my mother. So
and Cheska usually.
and Cheska. So everyone is aware of Lucy and her poops.
Maybe Erica's
true.
grandma is back because of social isolation. She's got a little to do.
Oh, I hope
she's
so.
Like,
I hope
check
so.
back in on them.
Erica's mom does show up in the chat every now and again. So if you're there right now, hello.
My
Hi.
mom frequently hangs out in the chat, and I'm sure she's doing so this morning because she doesn't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
Boom.
All right.
Okay.
But it's also fine because she's listened to a lot of our episodes, and so is aware of the content of this podcast.
Oh, Jeff, before we start this, I should ask, do I have your consent to post this episode on Pornhub? Because that's one of our main platforms.
We do have quite a following. At least we get a lot of views.
We
for some
do.
reason.
I mean, sure.
Okay, great.
It's just the
10 and
audio
3/4
version, so-
inches is our biggest success there.
Yep. No, yeah,
Okay.
10 3/4 inches is pretty good. And the other one is, do vagina have bone? That one is doing pretty all right.
There's one comment on one of the episodes, which is just, why is this here?
Yep.
Questions.
So, yeah. Do we have
It's a
any
question we can't
subscribers on
answer either.
Pornhub?
We have 2, I believe. Give me a sec.
Oh my god.
Nice.
I made the mistake of almost checking this at work many times.
I'm pretty sure I've checked
Oh.
it in incognito tabs at work.
We only have 1 subscriber now.
Oh, I'm doing something wrong.
Get that SEO. Maybe if we do a cross promotion with Pornhub, we can.
Oh god.
Our subscriber, their profile picture is just boobs. just straight up.
Isn't that how it works?
Yeah,
All right. Well, is everybody ready?
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. This date is wrong.
You're right. It is 28th.
Yep. Maynard, Tool, Schism. All right. That's the only Tool song I could think of. All right. Hello and welcome to Gaming Fix episode 114 on this March 28th, 2020. I am your host, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite work from home tip. I am joined today by Pat.
That's there's so much depth to that one.
Exactly. There's a lot of depth to me. Joined also by Alex.
That's just existential despair.
That's
Is of our times.
sometimes
I mean,
it can
maybe more.
help to take a moment to just scream, let out a guttural grunt with your frustrations.
It is 6:20
working
a.m. and
from
I live in an
home, you know?
apartment.
You can do that at home. You can't really do that at an office. So
Well, I do have a mouth, so I can scream.
Oh, good for you.
also Allison.
Hi, live from my parents' house, you know.
So like
Trust
a
me, I
millennial
wish I
should
was
be.
live from my
Yep.
parents right now.
And joining us this week, we have a special guest, Jeff Davis.
Yay!
Yay.
Happy to be here.
Gotta do the Animal Crossing clap thing.
Oh, yeah.
Animal Crossing clap. You can't see it, but it's very frenetic, and
Yeah.
my camera is heavy.
And you don't really have
Jazz
fingers.
No,
so
you have
just
to
go-
slam your fists together.
No, but your fists don't actually contact. So you just
Pick it
go,
up.
and then there's like somehow noise comes out.
So
Yeah.
this is like
You're
real
slamming-
shake kind of thing.
slamming air together. It's invisible symbols.
Oh yeah, I like that.
So I don't know. We there's a lot to talk about this week. News, games are coming out again, people. So many games.
For like a month, and then they aren't coming out again. Maybe ever again.
You know what? The games that are coming out, they could get us through a while, and you know,
And games that have
I
come
know
out.
I have a big enough backlog to get me
Yes.
through this.
I could open a new game in my Steam library every day and play a new game for like, I don't know, 4 years, something like that.
Oh,
There's a lot of games in my Steam library.
something like that for me too. Yeah, and one of my impulses right now with everything that's going on, and my state has a current shelter in place stuff, is to go, I should pick up that JRPG. and
And then
I'm
you
like,
you
hey,
have to do the classic thing where you play it for 4 hours and then never again.
Mhm.
I've certainly done that, but
That's like a special kind of hell. Like you keep starting a JRPG and playing for 4 hours, and then starting a new JRPG playing for 4
that sounds
hours.
terrible. No, but I mean, if you add up all the JRPGs over time, that's all the gaming you'll ever need. So
Jeez, you're right.
You can just play
Like,
Trails of Cold
time-wise.
Steel
Yeah,
nonstop.
yeah.
Oh God, this is going to be a week where we don't talk about a Trails game. I think
I had to mention it. Just
Yeah.
That's right.
to get our
we
quota
almost
in.
got out of this.
It's okay. Now we can add that as a keyword.
Yeah,
Great.
get that SEO baby. But we got games, we got an anime, we got
Hella news.
So why don't we start with Alex?
Hey.
You got a few things here. I don't know what you want to start with. I can talk about one of them.
Yeah, I want to start with the one that you and I have both finished.
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
I don't know if you talked about it last week. I'm a bad co-host and I didn't listen to last week's episode.
I did. Basically my feelings last week, Pat and Allison were both here, so they can confirm, was
Doom
that
Eternal.
this is Doom Eternal, and my feelings at the time were basically it's good. I don't know if it's great, which is
Mhm.
pretty much what it boiled down to at that point, because it felt at that point like kind of similar to Doom 2016, but more arcadey. I compared it more to Quake 2 than anything else. Like it
Arcadey in the way that it wants to pull quarters from you. If it could do that.
That's an interesting way to put it, but I don't disagree.
Because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
And you can just like die, and the extra life system is like questionable at best.
It's weird. And I'll get to it, but like just the thing that made it feel most arcadey to me was how you would go up to secrets and stuff, and they would just be
Mhm.
giant question marks that were floating around in the air.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they had talked about how that was like a very deliberate choice to like be kind of corny,
Yeah.
but it seems like with this game they went a little too hard in the trying to be funny direction.
Yeah.
Like
Like with the story, or you just mean overall tone?
just in general. Not like, yeah, it's just in general it comes across as trying too hard to be funny. Like the mortally challenged thing, like, oh, the mortally challenged should blah 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 from like the announcements and stuff. Like that gets
Mhm.
repeated so many times, and it's like if it was once, like, oh, okay, but it just they keep using it.
Yeah, I would say the first half of it or so, the jokes they go for are mostly a whiff. The
Mhm.
only time where I felt like it kind of had that Doom 2016 charm was when they brought back in Dr. Satan.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, as soon as he came back and his just general like disdain for you came back, like I was like, oh yeah, this is what was great about Doom.
Yeah, his disdain for Doom Guy is
Yeah.
very good, but like his part in the story is so small, and you don't actually get kind of Doom Guy's disdain for him. It's very one-sided. So
Yeah.
which can be genuinely very funny.
yeah, like
that-
just his complete disregard, like I don't care that you're saying, oh, be careful with this power core, as the Doom Guy just like smashes it with his foot. That was like one of the highlights and early moments where you're like, oh, this game is just like taking the piss the whole time in Doom
Yep.
2016. I think there are some great like little moments in Doom Eternal. There are like some moments where Doom Guy has to fire like some big guns but like the safety's on or whatever, like the electronic targeting stuff isn't quite ready. And as the AI is like, okay, I'm booting it up, and the Doom guy is just like hitting the buttons over and over, trying to get it to fire. I thought that was pretty good.
Is there any moment that comes close to the beginning of Doom 2016 where you ride up the elevator and then he
cocks the shotgun
in time with the music?
No, I
Then I was not
disappointed.
interested.
They tried, but like the thing is, they tried, but they did it in a cutscene, which felt like kind of weird.
I feel like that's the sentence of this game. They tried, but they did it in a cutscene.
Yeah. Overall, it still plays like when it's at its best, it plays really good. Like the feel is still there. Like I would say it's super competent in that way, but it just feels like the game design went real weird. And like
they put in too much.
Yes, there's like a billion systems that you're observing at any time.
When I saw that this game had weeklies, that was when I was like, either this game is gonna finally be the cure for the Destiny issues that I have, or which I figured it wouldn't be, or man, I don't want to play this game. And I think it's probably the latter.
Yeah, it's like Brutal Legend Destiny Edition. Like that was.
But I love Brutal Legend.
But
it's.
Andre, I don't know if another thing I voiced last week that I'm gonna double down on now was I got really tired of seeing the low ammo kind of notification. Like I understand their deliberate choice to make you use the chainsaw because they want you to have that be a part of the flow. But like the fact that like when you start the game, when you get the shotgun, which is like your best weapon at the start of the game, you only have 12 rounds.
Yeah.
Like, and the encounters are usually with like 40 enemies.
Yeah, it's the beginning, like basically until the end when I got like the final ammo upgrade. I was like feeling really like strapped for ammo at all times.
Yeah.
But then eventually, like if you go back through the game, like because you can replay the levels and they want you to, with like there's like master levels, which are like remixed versions of the levels you can play. And they want you to do, I think they want you to do those. That's why there's weeklies and stuff. And I think things would feel better if you go back through with like all the ammo and stuff. Or if you play with like the cheat codes on, which are like infinite ammo, overdrive, and like one hit kill punch and stuff like that. So that then it's really fun to just like run through the levels and kill a bunch of demons. Because there's like no limit on your ability at that point.
Yeah, but in the moments, like in the first playthrough, the first time you get there, and you're just constantly running out, that was just not fun.
Yeah, and the middle of that game kind of drags.
It does,
which is unfortunate.
And I will say, the last boss fight drags like hell. Holy shit! It took like an hour.
No, I didn't take that long.
Like I'm okay, let's say half an hour. But like
maybe
it's
that stage,
it takes forever. And the problem wasn't that it was hard, it was that I kept running out of ammo that I could hit the boss with.
For me, it was I couldn't figure out so the last boss, minor spoiler, is you have to basically hit like 8 different points on this big thing.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find like the 8th part on the last phase. I was like, where am I supposed to be shooting?
It is not clear. I basically had to just like poke at it with like my weakest weapon to see which part turned red. And I was like, oh, okay, it's that one.
Yeah. So that was not great.
Yeah.
I think it's
fun. I think it's a fun game to play, but unless you like are playing Doom 2016 constantly, I don't think you need to run out and like play this. I think you're safe to wait a bit and get it on sale.
I would agree.
The only reason that I do plan to eventually play it is because of the unfortunate and surreal moment when on the Waypoint Radio they were discussing like, oh, it's like the metal band that has a bunch of backstory to their albums. And then then Patrick Klepek was like, oh, so it's the Coheed and Cambria video game, which is like, nobody talks about Coheed and Cambria ever. So it's whenever somebody mentions it on like a podcast or something, it's like, I get like sweats and like my heart rate goes up.
So it's literally like catnip for you.
So yeah, pretty much. So I was like sitting playing Animal Crossing with an earbud and listening to Waypoint Radio, and then they started talking about Coheed and Cambria, and it's because of the sheer terror that one of the people on the show is going to be like, "Oh yeah, that band, they're dog shit," and then I can't listen to that podcast ever again. Thankfully,
okay.
on Waypoint they were kind and suggested that Coheed was a good band, but
So on that note, what did you think of the lore stuff, Alex? Did you actually like take the time to read those codex entries, or did you just skip over them?
I read some of them. I didn't read all of them. They were well written. Like everything. That's the thing about this game. Everything is well done. It's just I think they tried to do too much, and then they kind of they lost sight of what made it fun.
Yeah.
That makes
So
sense.
like in Doom 2016. There was like the codex entries got progressively more bizarre, as like they were in like multiple parts. So like enemy ones would be in like 3 parts. And as you got progressively further in, they just got more and more like crazed, like depending on which stage of like the demonic invasion / possession the person was in when they were writing it.
Yeah.
So that was really interesting. It didn't seem like that happened so much with the stuff here. But instead of going like really weird and goofy, they got like really serious. And we're like, no, here is the backstory and lore of Doom Guy and where the demons come from and like this other third race. And it like reading the Doom Guy's backstory was actually kind of fun. It's really stupid, but it's interesting.
It does still have a lot of stupid. Which is good. Like
it's very high fantasy, like bordering on like Army of Darkness.
Yeah,
almost.
Like
not that quite farcical, but
like
I may end up just reading the wiki top to bottom to like get all the codex entries because that stuff sounds great. It does not sound like a game I will enjoy playing.
Like minor spoiler here, but like one of the objectives that you get is blow a hole in Mars. And like when it gets to that kind of stupidity, that's pretty funny. But
that's amazing. And I'm like, that's the one thing that's made me go, should I pick this
The
game?
one thing you need to do in Doom Eternal is blow a hole in Mars.
Yep. And it should be noted you're doing so with a giant like moon-sized BFG.
Yep.
Amazing.
So it almost seems too much to me.
Like it's very dumb.
Yeah. And then this was in like the preview coverage stuff. Well, I know, but for listeners, this was in preview coverage. This was like what the E3 demo stuff was. He shoots himself out of this gun onto Mars.
Yeah, he does.
So like that stuff is like pretty good. It's just like a lot of the interstitial, like the cutscene story stuff they try to do is like
my favorite kind of dumb in video games, and this is why 2016 managed to walk the tightrope, but it's like the scene in Halo 2. I think it's in Halo 2. It's in Halo 3.
Finish the fight where he kicks the bomb.
Exactly. Yes. That is my favorite because when they wrote that, they were like, this is the coolest fucking thing anyone's ever done in a video game. And they meant it. That was like
fucking cool.
It is cool, but it's also stupid.
Oh yeah.
And that's my favorite is it's like unintentionally pretty dumb, but also executed with like the clarity of purpose of someone trying to make the raddest shit in the universe. And so that's why sometimes when I hear things like he shoots himself out of a gun to Mars, it's like approaching Saints Row levels of sort of self-awareness that to me almost detracts from my enjoyment of those kinds of moments.
See, I was just going to mention Saints Row because like Saints Row is like very specifically, I mean, like it's the antithesis of what you're saying, Pat, but also I love that level of dumb where it's just like, the intentionality is like, let's go as far as we possibly can,
which is fair. It's a preference thing for sure. I'm not necessarily saying everyone has to agree with me.
It works here. I think it like doesn't quite get to what you're saying because you don't expect this to happen because the whole thing is like, okay, you're going to shoot a hole in Mars so you can get down to Mars. And then they're telling you like, okay, go to like this transporter or teleporter to get down to the surface. And then you just like seat yourself in the gun. He's like, that's not a teleporter. What are you doing?
Yeah.
So like
That might
the
be-
characters
that might
be-
around aren't like, oh, go shoot yourself out of the gun.
if they can affect
guy is doing
if they
it.
can affect like a lack of awareness for what Doom guy is gonna do, like they do in
Yeah.
2016. That's where it works. I think is the characters around him being like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And
There's just not a lot of that.
Yeah, and that's when Samuel Hayden comes back is when you start getting that again,
Yeah.
Yeah.
which was when it got better. Anyways, I don't know. If I was reviewing it, I'd probably give it a 3 out of 5.
Well,
Um,
I'm going to write a review. I want to do some of the master levels and maybe touch the multiplayer, even
Yeah.
though I don't really care, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be really good.
The
I don't know.
multiplayer is the thing I care the most about, but I think I'm
Well,
just
I'll
going to
tell
wait
you
for a
if
sale.
it's,
I don't trust you. You
Though-
like so fewer things than I do because you have so much more like concern for what you spend your time with. I'll do like whatever.
Also-
I'm sorry. I don't like the Crew 2, Pat.
It's fine. You probably have better taste than I do, but look, if I want to drift some Nismos,
Yeah. I wish I played more games and like dived into more things like you do, Pat.
well, that's very sweet of you.
But in the meantime,
I'll have.
we have a new game from Alex.
Yeah.
I've not heard of this game.
Yeah, so I picked up this game on a whim. I had just seen it in the Switch eShop, and I was like, oh, this looks like a game. Because I tend to do that, where I'll just pick up video games without knowing what they are and doing no research.
When you saw it, did you yell?
No, I did
don't wanna
not.
spoil
I
the
did,
name of
I
the
did
thing.
not know. I did not yell the name of this game, though that
okay.
would have been an inappropriate reaction in some degree. But this game is called Stella with one L.
Thank you,
And
Pat.
I don't have a ton to say about it because I dropped it after about half an hour because it's not very good.
Oh.
That's
Oh.
unfortunate.
Just as a heads up, but it's basically reminiscent of kind of a Play Dead game. So it's like a Limbo or an Inside where you're just you're on one plane and you're going from left to right, jumping and grabbing onto things. Except it's not very polished and also it isn't very clear with what it wants you to do most of the time. So, and I think on Switch the quality might be significantly degraded from what it is on the PC.
The Steam page makes it look very nice.
Yeah, maybe it was just a Switch thing for me then, because on the Switch it looks like crap.
It might just be like stylized. Like it doesn't look like hyper sharp or anything. It just looks like the art is decent.
Yeah, but like on the Switch it was very aliased. Like there was getting a lot of artifacting, and it was just not the best in that way. But like my main issue came from gameplay. Like I'm usually willing to sit through bad games, like Control, and go all the way to the end, and then. Sorry, but
Jeff, you don't know about the long history of Alex complaining about Control that exists on this podcast.
All right.
The 5,000 word essay about why Control is actually bad.
I
Okay.
have most of that done. I decided not to post it because I don't want to be mean to people.
But you still need to send it to me because I really want to read it.
That's fair. I can do that soon.
I think that game was what, number 4 on our Game of the Year list?
Yep.
And it should have been number 2.
It is certainly number 2 in some way, but regardless, this game. Usually, I do have patience for bad games, but and I don't know if maybe I'm being too harsh with this one being a bad game. It feels like it's a small studio. Like it feels like it's probably made by not a huge number of people. So I don't want to poop on them. But like it's just little things where it's like, oh, I'm running through this area and now suddenly I'm dead because I didn't see this colony of rats that was crawling around because like they're so tiny and like not animating and not really making much noise that you can't see them. It's like, oh, okay, well, cool, I guess. So then you die and then the checkpoint is back like 20 seconds and it's just like you keep doing it and it's like, okay, I don't know what you want me to do.
And that sounds like that JJ Mac game. That I felt like I had a lot of the same problems with that. The bad controls.
Well, in JJ Macfield, the controls were bad, but like it was usually pretty clear about what it wanted you to do, and like the puzzles like made sense and all that kind of stuff. In this one, it's just like Well, I guess I'll just interact with the thing that's kind of glowing red and see what I can do with it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it just doesn't do anything, and then you die, and it's like, oh,
Yeah, and in the missing, you always knew where you needed to go. Like sometimes there were definitely puzzles, and there were definitely times where you're fighting against the controls. But this sounds like it'd be kind of excruciating to be like kind of designed to be, just not knowing what to do, but you just keep dying. That
Yeah,
sounds
missing-
really not fun.
It's the things that make the missing frustrating are so like tied to its themes also, whether that was intentional
Right.
or not, that I think it works in that game.
Right. And that's
Does-
why I don't really care about the controls personally. Because I'm like, okay, this all makes sense as kind of an overarching package. Whereas does this frustration necessarily come across in any sort of story or any sort of theming, at least as far as you can tell?
not
Does
as far
being
as I can tell,
trans
yeah.
mean you control poorly with keyboard and mouse? Is that what I'm hearing?
No.
is that what the bad controls are meant to symbolize?
It's
I don't know.
you just didn't get far enough.
Yeah, I should probably go
So-
further with this game. I did drop it. Maybe I'll go back to it.
You don't have to play anything you don't want to.
There's also a kind of answer question here. This is developed by Skybox Labs, and it looks like they're a sort of second or third tier developer. That this is only their second original title. It looks like they mostly have been porting and working on the entire Age of Empires, Minecraft, and the latter lesser Halos of our generation. So like we can I think on one hand, sure, it looks like a fascinating piece that's trying to get at that limbo space, as you already said. But I think that I don't know, I'm watching the trailer here and it looks like it's favoring style over substance, and really what it wants to do is just have a very meditative 90-minute animated movie. And hopefully we can, get into this sort of meditation on apocalypse, and maybe we can, glean something from that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being like hard here, but that seems like what you're aiming at.
No, I don't think you're too far off. So I don't know.
Maybe you'd have better luck with Tasty Lethal Tactics, their other original title. Which, not gonna lie, quite
TASTEE.
quite a different product.
Is it TASTE?
I
Tasty.
think it's tasty.
Tasty?
I can tell
Pronounced like
from one.
pasty.
I can tell from one screenshot here on Steam that there are daily missions. So that might be a service game if you want to get into more of their oeuvre.
The last time they released something for that was June 2nd, 2018. So. But
Tasty.
they've also worked on Age of Empires 2, the 2013 edition.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll get back to it, but at the moment, it's not really doing anything for me.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I hear this next thing you brought is doing something for a lot of people.
Yeah, let's get
hearing
back to
people
that.
talk
I
about
need
this.
to step
Okay.
away for a sec, but we can get back
Okay.
to that.
So we can come back. Then, in that case, Allison, it's your turn.
Yay.
You brought a few things to us this week. I assume you brought one last week.
Yeah.
Okay. So, do you want to talk about the new thing first? Or
Sure.
yeah, Alex is stepping away. Let's talk about the thing Alex doesn't care about first. Let's spare him the Animal Crossing talk.
All right. So, Animal Crossing. I know that I'm not the only one who's been playing it. I know Pat's been playing it. I know Andre, you just started.
I have finished the
Don't know
first day.
why you're doing this to yourself.
Because my girlfriend bought it.
Okay,
she
that's
was
fair.
feeling
Is
sad.
she at least the
and
resident coordinator?
No, so we switched like primary switches. So my primary switch is now her Switch Lite, and her primary switch is my Switch. So I can play on my account on my Switch, and she can play on her account on her Switch. and we just need one copy of the game.
Yeah,
but we
yeah.
can't go to each other's island and play together. We can like visit each other's island, but we can't like co-op
Oh.
on the same island
Got it.
with one copy. Which
Okay.
why are you doing?
But
this?
you each have your own islands then.
Yes, we each have
Okay.
our own island.
That's the way to
and-
go. I've heard that being player 2 on the same
Yeah.
Switch is not enjoyable.
I feel like I would get extremely frustrated if
Yeah.
I didn't have complete control over my island. Maybe that's just me being controlling over dumb stuff when I have no control in anything else. So, you know,
So how is Animal Crossing a weekend? Because one day in, I don't get it. It's
I
fine,
honestly love it, but I kind of knew that I was going to love it. It's extremely the game that I need it to be right now, and I think that I just really like the sense of progression it has right now. I think this is one of those things where a lot of people will either love it or hate it in terms of how each day you have something kind of new to look forward to or something new to jump to. So like, for example, I know that my resident services is updating today. So I'm just like, when I get off this podcast, I'm going to go see Isabel and it's going to be great. But it's just extremely relaxing. And I don't know. It's exactly the game that I need it to be right now, which is very good. And it's just very fun how it keeps opening up new things. So I don't know if I have. It's also one of those games where I kind of understand if other people aren't as into it, but I think with the way of the world, I am just extremely into it right now.
I have 2 words.
Yeah.
Strip mining. That's what's fun about Animal Crossing. You buy a Nook ticket, it costs 2,000 miles. It takes you about 10 minutes to get 2,000 miles once you're set up and rolling. You go to an island, there's someone there who's like, I really like this island. It's great. I'm so happy I came here. And then you go, nice. And then you fucking ravage that place. You take every last piece of iron, every last rock, every last tree, every last fruit, and you just like sink the island into the sea and leave.
Have you ever generated a bunch of tarantulas on?
No, I haven't gotten a tarantula island yet.
Okay, no, you don't have to get one. What you have to do is you go to an island and then you completely cut down every single tree, pull up all the stumps, pull out all the flowers and all the weeds, and you have to break every single rock. So like you do that, so it's just a completely flat nothing
Wasteland, and then the spiders come.
because you're removing all of the other anything else that would generate any other bugs. So there's only a couple more bugs that can generate, and one of them is the tarantula. So
All right, I will try that. You know, the
it
only
made
thing
me a ton of money, but you also feel like kind of a jerk player too.
I wish that I could get an upgrade for the plane that's like carpet bombing, so I could just save myself the trouble of actually cutting down all this stuff.
Yes, Dresden edition.
Yeah, and then just have the plane Wilbur fly over and just like lay waste and then drop me off.
So the thing that I have learned over the past like week as Animal Crossing has been out is people are real weird about Animal Crossing.
Yeah,
there are people who take it way too seriously.
To be clear,
Yeah.
I'm kind of talking in jest. I actually wish the game was a little more aware of the fact that it's a game about colonizing an island and then brutally ravaging the dozens of small islands around it. But it's also very cute and fun. So,
but like,
yeah, it's one of the. I don't think it's quite at the level of like some of those other games that are being unaware, but at the same time,
it's not as bad as Monster Hunter.
Right. But that's exactly what I was thinking of. But I don't
can't strip mine in Monster Hunter.
But I don't feel quite as well. But also, there's no like sentient creatures on these other islands.
Wildlife
like,
to kill.
There's just like bugs that are kind of hanging out.
Oh, just fish and insects to trap in a museum, you know.
Yeah, you do trap them in a museum. I was going to say you don't kill them, but you do take their agency away.
But this game's museum is so lush and big and
beautiful. It's better than
lovely.
where they were before.
But
don't worry, it's better. They wouldn't have made it on their own.
Oh no.
Not with the way you play, Pat.
The colonial arc.
Back to my point about the last week making me realize people get weird about Animal Crossing is like there are people who take it way too seriously, like the time skipping and like I have to min-max everything and do it as fast as possible. That's like why don't you play the game the way it was meant to be played? And they're like, no, you have to play it with time skipping. That's the way it was designed.
You were on last week. That's right. I had you should you should go
Pat
back.
had a rant about time skipping and it was amazing.
I believe it started with, hey, if you time skip, fuck you. And then it went on from there.
It's like I don't care if people do it. It's just like that. And then like the min-maxing in general is just like people will get like I thought this was supposed to be like a chill, relaxing game. Like everyone like talking about like I need to get peaches on my island, and I'm like, why do you need peaches on your island?
See,
because they look like butts. That's why.
Is that literally it?
Well, I mean,
also sell for more. But.
Also, you want to get like with the Nook Miles thing. I think that it gives a lot more structure to Animal Crossing than it has in the past. And one of the things that that you can get Nook points for is each new fruit that you add to your island. So it rewards you for having all the fruits. Well, also it's the other thing about getting all the fruits onto your island is that it's an excuse to also visit people, and it's also an excuse to, kind of give you something to work for. So that's the other thing I kind of like about this in particular is that they really want to give you a lot of stuff to work for, so that that you always can kind of, it's always very much, you can go at your own pace for it. But I feel like every day that I play it, I'm like, okay, today I want to do collect this amount of stuff. I want to pay off this debt, which is, fun. I'm trying to make sure that I can catch a specific fish before it goes away at the end of March.
Oh God, so I have like 4 more of those to catch.
Yeah, there's one where I'm like, why won't you come?
I gotta go fishing this weekend.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of the thing that I really like about Animal Crossing is that it really rewards different play styles. Like they're the people who get really, really intense about it, do time skipping, and are min-maxing everything. Whereas you can also just ignore all of this and just let Nook Miles roll in when you can. And if that's fine too. The other thing I'll say is that this is like the most wholesome multiplayer experience, I think.
It's pretty good
in any game. Like there's been stories coming out of because of various social distancing, people having like birthday parties and like even a wedding in Animal Crossing. And I'm like, it's so cute. Hey. My sibling and I were playing it and we were visiting each other's islands and we were just like taking weird pictures in each other's museums. And it was just like, it's very sweet. And
I saw a streamer that I follow played a big game of hide and seek in the museum on stream, which sounds very fun.
I think there's a lot of cool stuff you can do in Animal Crossing. I'm still only on day 1, so you can't do shit.
Yeah, that's a thing. And it's especially, there are frustrating moments. Like I had one on Sunday where I didn't know that you needed to have the Nook Stop open, Nook's Cranny open. It's called Nook's Cranny. It's weird. I said Nook's Cranny. I said, I need to get Nook's Cranny open. And my partner was like, excuse me?
Hey, it's been called that for years.
Yeah, I know. You and I know that.
You're just new here.
Anyway, I needed to open Nook's Cranny in order to get I didn't realize that was like the requirement for the turnip seller to come to town.
Yeah.
So like I was a day off, so I didn't get to buy turnips on Sunday.
Me too.
And that fucking sucked.
Me too. Like, and I'm just like, it should be nice if I
mean, my island has had shit turnip prices this week, so it's probably ultimately saved me. But
yeah,
it's that some little stuff like that early on is definitely frustrating. But I don't know. Once you get a few days in and you're in the sweet spot of like there's more to get, but you have all of the services to be able to kind of play as long as you want to. I think that's when it really starts to sort of take off.
Yeah, I personally don't really mind the kind of slow start, because I think that it really that kind of feeling of it progressing every day is really appealing to me. But I totally get that it's not for everyone.
Well,
like the first couple of days when there was not that much open, I just did a lot of fishing and a lot of bug collecting so that my museum would be in tip-top shape. But
and what I've come to find for like the way that I tend to enjoy games is and I'll talk about this a little later too, but like I like complex games that require a lot of explanation, but I don't enjoy playing through opening bits of games where there's like lots and lots of tutorialization and lots of exposition about the things that I'm going to be doing. It's fine if it's a narrative heavy game, but the thing with past Animal Crossings, and we've talked about this this is part of why I have a hard time with Stardew Valley, is there's such a long there's such a long ramp typically between starting the game and being able to actually like start playing for real. Like I probably just need you to give me one page of information about how the game works, and then I can figure the rest out from there. Whereas with past Animal Crossing games, part of my frustration has been like, okay, well, you start the game and then you talk to this person, and you talk to this person, and then you're eventually in an hour in, maybe you finally have your like home loan ready to go. But then there's another hour of mechanics you have to kind of learn about before you're sort of set loose. And I think one thing that the slow start in New Horizons does is it doles those things out slowly so that every day you spend like 5 minutes learning about something, and then you're free to do whatever you were going to do. And that was very successful for me in those opening days, because it felt like I didn't have to sit for ages and thumb through dialogue that was like cheekily explaining mechanics, when really I just wanted to like go and fish. And so I think that was a positive thing for sure.
Yeah, and I just personally like the that feeling of when I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh yeah, it's a new day in Animal Crossing. I get to do something new today. And I don't know, that it's I don't normally stick with games that are kind of like a daily, checking things daily. That's not normally how I play games a lot, but this, I'm definitely like every new day, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a new thing. So that's
what
been
if
fun.
Animal Crossing had a season pass?
I don't think we'll have to say what if for very long.
Oh God.
I'll buy it, but not be happy about it.
It'll be called the Nook Pass.
Yep.
Tom Nook will introduce you to an exciting new business venture of his.
Well, you just need, but instead of paying off it off in bells or miles, you need $20 real.
Do you
Exactly.
think they do like expansion type stuff? Like here's like a $30 expansion to this game.
Almost
I doubt
assuredly.
I doubt it.
I
I think they'll do a pass.
I don't think that they didn't do stuff like that in.
But they
but they also
didn't have the infrastructure.
They also
Right.
didn't do that for Pokemon, but
Yeah.
No, but they did have a history of selling an edition of Pokemon with the basically what this DLC kind of
Right. They had
accomplishes for the Pokemon Pass.
like the Pokemon expansion is in place of Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, like that kind of
Yeah.
the next game. So whereas like historically Animal Crossing, like they had a big update for New Leaf when they with the Welcome Amiibo update, but that was like a free update that they added extra stuff and added Amiibo
Like,
support.
do they add new mechanics and like, because they'll have like the seasonal like event stuff, but will they add like there's like new kinds of islands and like
I
I don't
think
know, you can turn your island into a metropolis.
if I had to guess, I would say that they'll probably do a like $10 pass that has a bunch of cosmetics on it, and like you either redeem Nook miles to advance it, or you do some set of objectives to advance it, and then they'll roll in some free like gameplay updates on top of that, that would I mean, Nintendo isn't always smart about how they monetize this stuff, so maybe not, but that seems like the no-brainer to me. Rather than try to build expansions to create recurring revenue, like theme it around the major season over the course of 3. Like if you put out like a Halloween pass and made it run for the whole of October, running up to Halloween, so that then you get a bunch of costumes and stuff, that kind of thing.
That sounds like the events that they do during the holidays, which are free. Like,
yeah, I just think they're going to charge for them this time.
We'll talk about no, but they're already planning one, because we'll talk about more of the Nintendo Direct later. But Bunny Day is coming, and
I feel like you could do like enhanced versions of.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Yeah,
so like you get the free version, and then you've got the like, if you pay $10, you can get all these extra cosmetics.
So, but also Nintendo Online this game is sort of a selling point for that service when it doesn't really have any selling points right now. So maybe that they'll be content with just selling copies of the game and then getting people to buy Nintendo.
It's also been a really big system seller, and it's been a big online seller like that. So, I mean, I think that there is definitely value in going, hey, here's all these online events where you can keep playing this game, keep your online subscription. There's definitely value to that.
For sure. And they could just stick with that too. I wouldn't be super surprised.
All right. Well, I'm going to have us move on from Animal Crossing. It was a good talk, everybody. Good job, Allison.
Yep, good one.
Yay. Oh,
do you see what I did there?
There we go. I see what you did there.
I hate this.
See what you did there. I played the game. Good job. It was just announced and shadow dropped in the Nintendo Direct.
Which was also a surprise direct, unless you follow GamesBeat and Jeff Grubb, who was saying all along it's going to happen on the 26th.
Who also said for like a month that a fake Sony event had already happened that didn't happen. So you can't really trust that man.
Well, he was just trolling people on purpose.
I know.
He published a story on GamesBeat that said, "Yeah, I bet it's the 26th."
Yeah.
Game looks cute.
I don't think the PS5 is going to be announced in February, guys.
Okay.
Anyway,
good job.
So good job. It's basically I feel I'm trying to figure out like the way to describe this genre of like chaos simulator where you are a child of a CEO of a company and you're given all these jobs to do and you keep moving up in the company, but you basically have to figure out how to do each puzzle, but you're also almost certainly going to wreck the place while doing it. So for example, if you're the first level is, okay, set up this projector, but to do that, you have to bring a projector from one side of the floor to another. So you think, okay, that seems like it's pretty standard, but in the process, you can very easily basically like destroy the whole office. So that's kind of the fun of the game, is that you're trying to figure out how to do these puzzles, but also it's just generally very, very chaotic, which is fun. So like there's also one where it's like, okay, you need to make all of the flowers bloom, which you do by watering them. You could just go get like pails of water and pour it and make the flowers bloom, or you can use like a fire hose and completely wreck shop, but you made the flowers bloom anyways.
Interesting.
Well, hey, it sounds like a win-win to me.
It's very silly. And also it's very kind of physics based. So like, for example, you can just completely fling stuff across with like you can kind of make it like a slingshot with a
like
cord
an
and just
cord,
yeah, and you just kind of fling stuff across. Like one part of the game, I'm like, I could wheel this through the thing, or I could just slingshot it across the building and it'll get there faster. So it's very
that logic
it's
makes
very
sense.
dumb. It's very fun.
Brenda from accounting doesn't need her like desk. It's
Or the walls. Like there's one point where I'm like, okay, how do I get this into this room? You can
Not
do
load
like
bearing.
a puzzle and like with turning on energy, like turning on stuff or whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm just gonna shoot it through the wall and punch a hole through the wall. And then it worked. So
Cool.
Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah.
exactly. No, and there's like so it's very, very silly. The one thing that I do think is a little bit I don't know if I necessarily agree with how they do this. And so at the end of each level, you do get ranked. It's just for the just for possibly replayability and for ranking, but you do get ranked lower for the more property damage you cause, which makes
That
sense
seems like-
logically.
That seems like the opposite of what it should be.
Right, exactly. Like it makes sense logically. Like, oh, it took you $60,000 worth of damage to set up a projector. That's gonna be rank you lower. Yes, no, it's that level of like I'm
That's very
causing
funny.
tens of thousands of dollars of damage to water some flowers or to get people into like, oh, I need people to attend this meeting, so I'm just gonna like punch through walls to get people to meetings. But it doesn't
The
seem
real
like it
corporate America
incentivizes
experience.
but it
Yeah.
doesn't seem like it incentivizes the fun bits, which is to just kind of destroy things.
Mm.
So I at a certain point had to just go, okay, I'm not going to care about this ranking at all. I just want to play this and do it the most dumb, fun way. Because if you're playing it trying to get like A's on all of the ranks, I don't know if it'll be like even that much fun. Because
Mhm.
playing it where you're trying to actually do a legitimately good job seems like it would be terrible. Whereas playing it so that you can cause vast amounts of property damage in an office setting is extremely fun. So
This game has co-op, yes?
yes, I haven't played it. I don't know how.
You should make your parents play it co-op.
Oh God, no! My parents will not. Also, I don't have my Switch dock, but
No. Well,
I forgot to bring that with me when I came over. But it's but yeah, it's very, very silly. There are a couple of times too that the puzzles can be a little bit tedious. I mean, not very often, but for example, there's the like water all the flowers level, and there are like over 200 flowers that you need to water, and most of them are pretty simple and pretty obvious. It's just, but there was a point where it got to be like, I need to find 4 more flowers. I'm like, where were they? Where was that last flower? And I'm just like trying to water the whole place.
Mm.
And it doesn't, I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily loved the feeling of like frustration of, okay, where's the last one? But some of the puzzles can be quite good too. So
Yeah.
It
It kind of sounds like it's scratching the Untitled Goose Game itch, but
Yep, exactly.
as though you're playing like Todd from BoJack Horseman.
that's beautiful. That's amazing. And I appreciate that. Yeah. So I think that I would say the way to play it would be to just ignore all of the everything except finishing the levels. You'll just still pass the levels. You just won't get a good rank. But really, you'll be having a lot more fun. And I don't think I'm only about I'm only like a third of the way through, I think, based off of the levels that they've shown. So I don't think that this exists, but if there should be a mode where you have to cause as much property damage as you physically can. Like the fact that it's not
Yeah,
in there is
exactly.
like,
You need like a burnout
absurd.
crash mode, but for destroying an
Exactly.
office building.
Exactly. And the fact that it's not there is disappointing because I'm like, I just want to see how much chaos I can wreak over this entire office this floor of this office.
Maybe they'll do DLC.
Yeah, that seems like a thing that'll have to come in an update if it's not already there. Or maybe once you beat it, it'll be like, okay, now you've unlocked the
See,
super secret mode.
that's why I said I haven't beaten it, so I don't know necessarily, but that'd be very fun if that was there. But it's $20 on the Switch. I don't know. I feel like most people could probably wait for a sale, to be honest, but it's definitely if you want some goofy fun where you're destroying a bunch of stuff, it's good.
Which DLC character would you like to see come in to wreak havoc? Like,
I mean, Goose.
Well, Goose, obviously, but like I'm also thinking like Doom Guy and Isabel as a pair, like coming in just destroying things.
Ryu from Street Fighter, just do like the car beat up mini game.
Yeah.
Someone goes, "Oh, my desk."
Exactly. That'd be beautiful. Or trying to think of like any fight scenes in movies where it take place in a office, but I can't.
What, you mean like all of Die Hard?
Fast and Furious.
Sure, yeah.
The
Fast
fight,
and Furious.
the fight with The Rock in it. Yeah.
Edward Norton from Fight Club.
Just beating himself up.
Yeah, just beating himself all over the office.
I have to go buy liquor because I have to take a shot every time someone says Edward Norton from Fight Club.
Is this just a rule for life?
Yeah, I have to.
I missed that.
It harms. I have to harm myself physically for having to think about Fight Club.
Going the penitent way. I see.
Exactly.
Fight Club is a good film.
It is.
Okay. Let's move on.
That is an excellent movie. All right, we're gonna take a brief detour back outside the world of video games, but back to Alex.
Hey.
He brought some scandalous stuff.
I don't think it's that scandalous.
I don't know. It's what I've heard about this show.
So, I'm
Children, cover your ears.
Yeah, bringing another anime, which hasn't actually happened in quite some time on this show. What was the last one? I don't even remember. But
I just saw like stills of Einstein.
Yeah. So this show is called Beastars. So it's kind of playing up Beast and Stars. And y'all have seen Zootopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. So Zootopia, like if I was to describe that movie, it's basically people, but they're animals. Like, like they're people.
Cops.
Yeah, like they're people.
Not people.
Yeah, like they're people first, and then they're just kind of made into animals as kind of just a way to represent them. Their species don't matter that much. Whereas in this show and the manga and all that stuff, they are animals first, and then they're portrayed as people. So like all the things about them, their species actually come into play. So like if they're herbivore or carnivore, like their traits. So like the wolves have a lot of inherent stuff that like, they see the moon and they get like psyched, or like it relaxes them or whatever. And they have a lot of instinct. So like when an herbivore and a carnivore start interacting, like the herbivore might have like their instinct to run, or like just like they'll get scared. And like there's all these crimes in society that are like, this carnivore mauled this herbivore, and it's like this murder thing. So it's not like Zootopia in that way. It's really interesting. I think it's a really good show, honestly. It's made by the same studio who did Land of the Lustrous, and you guys know my feelings on Land of the Lustrous, which is very, very, very positive. And I can tell that these guys, they like making the kind of stuff that I like to watch, because they're stories with a lot of depth, and they're coming at things from a really interesting angle, and they're doing stuff by authors who are really interesting. Like Land of the Lustrous is written by a very private person. Like she's a lady who's just wrote this story about androgynous characters, where gender plays a big part in the society and stuff like that. Or being genderless, I should say, plays a big part in their society. And like they're telling this story in a way that's like relating that to human society, but they're not humans, but they look like humans. And this is similar. It's written by a lady who's also very private. She's much like Yoko Taro in how she appears in public. She only wears masks. Like, she doesn't want to be known, really. She goes to public appearances because she has to advertise her shit. And you can tell that her story here is coming from a place of knowing. Like, it has commentary on so many different things. Like, racism is really huge in it. It's like almost like 1930s segregationist America in a lot of ways. There's a lot of like things like feminism comes up quite a bit, and like the power of a woman, especially like if it's a woman who is a rabbit who naturally does not have much strength and like is tiny, and people pity her because of her size. It's like, okay,
She wants to be a cop, and she's the first rabbit cop.
yeah, there is. I think they actually have one scene with the rabbit cop in it. I think that's probably pretty knowing. But you know, like they touch on a lot of subjects that I think are made much stronger because of the fact that they're not humans. Like, if you saw it as this 7-foot tall guy, like just in a normal high school situation or university situation or whatever, and people are kind of like ignoring him because like, oh, he's big, he's scary, obviously, like that would be kind of eye rolling, and they would try to do social commentary that just wouldn't work. But here, because the main character is this 7-foot tall wolf who really wants to be kind to everyone around him, like, and like he takes care of a little bug, and like he likes his tiny herbivore friends and stuff like that, but everyone's scared of him just because he's a wolf. And then suddenly there's murders in the city, and because he's a wolf, people are like naturally frightened of him and like keeping away from him. Like, they do a lot with social dynamics, but because they're animals, it is almost more relatable. So, and like another one of the main characters is a deer, who, you know, deer is a prey animal basically. And he's portrayed as being one of the strongest characters in the show because he recognizes how everyone perceives him as weak. So he wants to push against that. Like, it's really, really well done. I think it's probably, I mean, it only came out in North America in January, but I think it's probably my anime of the year so far. And I would be surprised if much went above it right now. So,
Well, it could also be your stage play of the year, because there's supposed to be a stage production starting in April. I don't know if that's going to happen. April to May in Tokyo and Osaka.
that
It
makes
sounds
sense.
like it
makes
does a
sense,
lot
though.
of like Zootopia is enjoyable movie, but part of the problem for me with that movie is the way it kind of like it tries to like map the different animals to different, not just ethnic groups of humans,
Like
but
social
like
groups in general.
social groups in general. And it's like it's sort of like, you know, you could just have confidence in your storytelling, and you don't have to like make it seem like these animals are like a specific racial group. That's where Zootopia kind of falls apart for me.
Mhm.
And it sounds like maybe this is better about just using that space to talk about those dynamics without needing to map it to like human real life society.
Yeah.
Which is very appealing to me because I like the concept a lot, but was a little frustrated with aspects of Zootopia's execution.
Yeah, I would say give the show a shot. It's on Netflix right now. It's 12 episodes.
The animation is beautiful too.
Yeah,
So
it's
it
Studio
looks
Orange.
really nice.
Studio Orange makes a case for why 3D is totally valid in
Yeah.
animation. Like, but
Yep.
Land of the Lustrous too. Land of the Lustrous is also like, that's a 10 out of 10 show, and this
Mhm.
is either a 9 or a 10 out of 10. I'm not sure, but it's pretty good. It's not pretty good. It's fantastic. Yeah, it deals with a lot of really mature topics. Just as a heads up, like there's a lot of talk of abuse, and there's a lot of things like sex comes up a lot, and
Yeah.
like it's not a kid's show, that's for sure. Like, but it's really, yeah, totally recommended. Worth watching. And again, that's Beastars.
All right.
All right. Well, now
Convince me.
they have been waiting very patiently this entire time. It is Jeff's turn to take us on a journey. I don't know where you want to start with this.
So I'll go ahead and comment first because it was brought up and I was listening to Allison's really excellent unpacking of Animal Crossing and good job. And I was thinking while I was listening to that Nintendo seems to be aiming to create games that almost hit satire but aren't. It's like they don't fully commit to the satirical in the way that we expect. I mean, Tom Nook, most of Tom Nook's lines.
That motherfucker.
Most of his lines are extremely, they're aimed as a wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the audience of going, hey, by the way, this is capitalist trash. But then on the other hand, the actual gameplay has you sort of complicit in the sort of simulated versions of historical colonial capitalist violence, and it's cute and it's okay, and I don't mean to yuck anyone's yum here, but at the same time it's just sort of like one of those sort of weird things.
Look at Advanced Wars.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing advanced about war.
Yeah. That's a really good example.
I think Nintendo, more than any developer, Nintendo takes the we're not political stance. Like, they don't get out there and say, oh, our games aren't political, but I think they do their best to, like, we don't want to rock the boat in any direction on any of this. We can poke fun at it, but we're not going to be like, oh, this is like, oh, the capitalism stuff is a joke. It's not a critique. So don't come at us with we're capitalist.
I don't know if that's successful.
I don't know if it's successful, but I think that's kind of the tack they approach. Like, they're, they don't have all sides, both sides kind of approach, but it's very much like we are not pushing a political agenda in this. Even if some of the stuff they put in there is oh, haha, capitalism jokes.
Well, I feel like so much of their identity as a developer and as a brand is we make fun games for families. And I think that while you can certainly still convey meaning and messaging in that, I think that they're like, if you ask them about that, they would probably just respond we're just trying to make a fun game, which I do like the idea of Nintendo going more into the satire, but I feel like it's them choosing to not lean into it is not quite as egregious as some of the other developers saying, oh, we don't want to be political when they're making trying to think of an example.
Well, at least they're not making games about militias in the Rocky Mountains or something.
Right, exactly.
I say as someone who likes Far Cry. I like Far Cry a lot because I like going around big open world environments and checking off checklists and shooting imaginary guns. But also, it's better than that. They're not making a dark trailer where it's London, the future, a post-Brexit world, and then the next week publishing a blog post.
It's Mario.
It's not political. Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a lot less egregious. I do think that the satire in Good Job, which is not developed by Nintendo but published by them, is probably some of the most explicit, because it is very specifically, you are the child of the CEO. The only reason you're here is because of nepotism and because of your privilege.
Yeah.
And the only reason that you can still keep working here is because of that. It literally says good job after everything, even though as you see the level of destruction around you. So I think it's probably some of the most explicit that Nintendo's gotten, but it's also, like I said, not developed by Nintendo.
Yeah, I think the weird thing about Nintendo is that they're also willing to censor between regions. They're willing to change content between regions.
What I was gonna mention too.
But not just the physical things, but what was it with Bernadette in Fire Emblem that they changed one of her lines with an update because I can't remember what it was exactly. It was something about how she was kind of
I'll look it up real quick.
abused as a kid or something like that,
She was like, yeah, I don't remember.
like tied to a chair,
Yeah.
told to whatever,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
and
like locked in a basement kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
like so like that's my weird thing about Nintendo is that it's like, oh, it seems like they're actually going to do something interesting. Oh wait, no, never mind. They're going to censor it between regions because they don't have enough confidence in it in a way,
Mhm.
which is kind of weird.
Well,
Yeah.
but
To
it's
some-
also who's doing the localizing. I guess Nintendo has the Treehouse stuff.
localizing, and it's to some
Yeah.
extent though, like, I'm not saying that I think it's better to shy away from ever saying something at all, but you could also have the Atlas problem on the other side where
Yeah.
they just, rather than carefully try to fix the context, they just with a brick go like, nope, we're just going to show everyone our transphobia, homophobia, sexism. Like,
Yeah.
so
I was
don't
gonna
know.
bring that
It's-
up
Why are we
in
talking
the,
about
uh,
Persona?
I was also
They
thinking about for the
changed
direct
it in the localized version.
about Catherine, which they're bringing to Switch, and
Yeah.
I
That's the right
like,
reaction.
I mean, yeah, and I liked it a lot on PlayStation 3. I would certainly purchase it on Switch if it was less gross and transphobic, and
Yeah.
and I'm like, it'd be nice if you localized it or at least like acknowledged fixing that, which I don't know if it's, I think that there is a balance there. And I mean, there's also a difference between like keeping in content that is like genuinely meaningful versus content that is straight up offensive. But
I don't know that they could do that with Catherine though, because the whole core conceit of that game is just
it's a specific plot thread though with
Oh,
a
okay.
specific
With the-
character.
yeah,
that
there's
is-
a couple
Okay.
characters that are
and
treated
dialogue around that character.
Okay, fair
They're
enough.
treated very poorly in the dialogue in very specific scenes. That is very outwardly phobic.
it's yeah,
Big yikes.
Mhm.
big yikes indeed.
Yeah.
Anyways, video
Yikes
games.
energy.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Speaking of big yikes energy,
yeah. Speaking of big yikes energy, let's talk about some video games. So
That,
point,
that transition was good. It can work for either of those games. It matters.
right? So Death Stranding in the time of the coronavirus.
hell yeah.
So Death
Oh.
Stranding.
Wow.
Kojima, our prophet.
Ooh.
Beautiful.
I never finished Death Stranding.
Me neither.
I should also play it. In the
I'm
time
still
of
in
coronavirus.
chapter 3.
Yeah, same.
I got.
No, wait, I'm in chapter 5. I'm sorry.
Oh
sorry.
wow, you're further ahead. I got to the part where I don't want to make us go off the rails, but I got to the part where you go and have to like convince the guy's like partner, wife, girlfriend or like you have to go like get
The
her-
artist.
the artist,
Oh,
yeah.
God.
And I was like, it's really weird the way he talks about his daughter. And Andre
Yep.
was like, yo, that's not his daughter. And I was
Yep.
like, this game is gross.
Yep.
And then I stopped playing it for a while.
Dude, you gotta
Correct.
keep playing that story because it gets weirder.
It does. It does.
That specific side story.
I got to the point
Um,
where the girl was like, I need to see him one more time and left. And I think that's the last thing I did.
Kojima,
So
no.
the thing that frustrated me about that was I had a truck there and I couldn't put her in the truck. I had to carry her on my back and walk.
this precisely. Yes. Thank you.
Why is this a thing? But
I feel so vindicated right now.
So how is Death Stranding in the times of
Sorry. Yes.
of
Let's
our
get back to your points.
of our global pandemic?
So the thing that is interesting about playing in it is that there's reality where I order pizza or I go pick up takeout and I go, how cool would it be to have that little contactless thing where I have the shunt down machine and that kind of thing. And then on the other hand, I have my prepper friends because I'm from a rural part of Michigan. And of course I have prepper friends. And
It's just a
They-
thing you develop when you.
yeah.
I like how
Yeah.
Pat's just nodding. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
that checks out. That's right.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
no, I mean, that's how
Michigan.
it goes. And so, I'm seeing sort of the idealization of their lifestyle within Kojima's sort of bizarre universe. And what I've sort of reflected upon is that playing Death Stranding now is I feel like there's some part of Kojima's writing which is not necessarily vindicated, right? It's not saying that like, oh, I told you all and you didn't listen.
Yeah.
It's more that it's coincidental in ways that are eerie and uncanny, and that if you go back and play it these days, there are certain scenes that hit way more that before they just kind of bounce off and you're like, oh, okay, so it's Kojima having another slow pan moment. Okay. What kind of comes to mind is anytime that you immediately find when you're way to a completely new location, not a prepper location, but an actual
new section
city
of the map.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this sense of the same kind of sense of bleak optimism, but also dreadful existential fear that I think characterizes much of the coronavirus situation, at least in Michigan, because right now we're under shelter in place. And I think reading the game from a pandemic, hermeneutic, to use a $5 million word, it makes the game a little bit more alive and maybe makes me a little more forgiving of the Kojima moments, of which there are so many. I mean,
You
yeah,
have
there
not
are.
yet begun to experience.
so many. I mean, when I first heard the word "still mother," I'm like, oh my God, Kojima, what are you doing? What are you doing?
I had a
Oh, it's
weird
exactly-
as I started playing this game and started getting into those moments, there was it's a very, I want to be clear that I had the same sort of cringe reaction of, oh no, what is this going to be? But there was a weird kind of like, I'm searching for the right word. It was like pleasurable in a way to go, you're going to do something really fucked up later, but not in the like, I enjoy awful stuff, in the way that's like, how bad is this going to get? Let's see. And it was a very weird kind of like, I want to see how terrible it is.
It's like a self-Schadenfreude.
Yeah,
Kind of, but like
masochistic Schadenfreude.
It's very masochistic. Yeah, definitely. But then there's so many aspects of that game that I actually like deeply appreciate and enjoy, even in some of the writing and characterization, specifically the performances, that I had a very interesting time with that game where I'd like deeply liked it, but also there was that like, it's like I don't even know. It's a very singular experience. Because I was going to say, like, it's kind of like watching a friend who you know is about to say something in a room that is deeply offensive and problematic, but I don't enjoy that. I find that some of the most anxiety-inducing moments of my life have been those situations. So it's not like, it's almost like there's a way to like deal with that anxiety via Kojima being problematic at times in a video game that I can experience one-on-one and reckon with. You're saying things that I find problematic. I don't know. It's a weird thing.
There's a catharsis not just in the storytelling, but also in the secondhand embarrassment.
Exactly. And of course, I wish that he just didn't do that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, knowing that he was going to, there's a certain degree of like weird reckoning with a feeling that is like a safe space to do it in.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Right.
But yeah, it's interesting to think back on the reception of this game when it came out. Specifically, how everyone's like, "Oh, this is an Uber Eats simulator." You know, like it's literally, "Oh, you're just being a delivery person. Why would that matter?" And now you're seeing the current situation where everyone's
essential employees.
yeah, where it's literally the most appreciated, or should be the most appreciated people, are the delivery drivers and the grocery store workers. Like,
Yeah.
And healthcare professionals, but yes.
Yeah, of course.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
For sure. Like,
But the people keeping like society together outside of the hospitals are the delivery driver, the service workers.
yeah,
who
for daily life kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
He's-
interesting.
So I think that's a very live point, and you definitely hit the nail on the head here, Alex. That was there's something really salient about Death Stranding, even though it's super problematic, and even though it's probably the most stressful game I've ever played, because I don't know, Horror Whale does something to me. So yeah, that's basically all I had to say about Death Stranding. Move on to Game of Thrones, or do you want?
If you want to talk about Game of Thrones Conquest,
Okay, so I don't want to monopolize time here.
no, you're
Oh,
No,
you're
go
fine.
for it.
You're good.
Okay. So I'm going to preface this by saying I fucking hate mobile games. I am not a mobile gamer. I mean, Pokemon Go was as far as I went.
sedentary gamer Jeffrey Davis.
That's right. That's right. Because I still haven't gotten over trauma of Activator from Sega Genesis. So Game of Thrones Conquest is basically a gacha game. It's pay to win. You know, it's
Sick.
one of those. Yeah, it's awful.
How much money did you put into Game of Thrones Conquest?
I'm not comfortable disclosing that number.
Oh, God. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was a thing. Nothing got turned off or anything, but it's one of those things that definitely hooks you, and it was one of those sort of theoretically like, oh, you can do free to play. You just have to make 15 other free accounts and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The mechanics are shit. It's generally just not an enjoyable game at all. I basically installed it on a whim.
I'm not following you. You're saying it's all right?
It's a pretty good
Yes.
time.
It's a great time. But then I was expecting your typical gamer community. And then I got hooked into this particular alliance guild kind of thing. And that's when everything changed, because it's not that the game suddenly became good. It didn't. But rather, I saw each allegiance trying to practice its own political imaginary, trying to practice its own kind of picture of domination. And all of this was relating to histories of interactions between players that were often going ignored and sort of trusted by other allegiances. And so full disclosure, so I teach over at Big Ten Midwest College, and I teach philosophy. And so precisely this kind of like political activity is like, oh, what's going on here? You know, this is exciting. I got to see, you know, people try to come up with different governance streams, where most people would be like, you know, hey, let's go watch a movie. So I started getting involved in this allegiance, and things became very hyper diplomatic and sort of subterfuge. And then there was, you know, people sharing screen caps, people sharing different dialogues. And this held for a month until the leader of that allegiance ended up having to leave because of health concerns, and leaving us all twisting in the wind. And so, noticing that the community was still deeply dysfunctional, what me and a couple other people tried to do is bring about a different political imaginary, even though we couldn't keep up with the spending. Because I cannot stress this enough, the spending for this game is monstrous. There are people who have spent 20,000 real dollars in this game.
Yeah.
And it's awful.
Best value.
Yeah. Like, I spent a maximum, I think, between student aid checks, $300 on just to get to where I was when I stopped.
Right.
And that was over a period of like 200 days, however many months that is. So I'm sitting here and I'm like, well, I can't beat them in combat. I can't get people to coordinate and stop being abusive. What do I do? And so me and a couple other people invented some storyteller characters that would relate histories to the communities, but these histories would be encoded in fable and in story. And the idea was that what it actually was the diplomatic intelligence that we had gathered in the first couple of months in the game, and then trying to deliver it in code to the entire kingdom, as it were. And it somewhere different. The community started to respond in different ways. It didn't become a not abusive shithole, because it still was that.
It's a mobile game.
It's a mobile game. But people started to respond to myself and other people in different ways, and it became a kind of tradition of story time every Friday or Saturday night. And people really enjoyed it. And it reminded me, actually, Allison, of what you were talking about in Animal Crossing, where people, gaming communities, create sort of sub games within the game, and then figuring out how to community bond there. And I keep thinking back, maybe I'll write an article about this someday, but I keep thinking back about the political potential of gaming communities and solidarity and coalition building, and using those sorts of spaces as like exercises for how to build a coalition. But yeah, I don't know. It was a fascinating experience. Please don't play this game ever.
You've played it enough for all of us.
Yeah, I've played it enough for everybody. And but I think one of the key takeaways is that, you know, when you can't beat people and change the environment in the typical ways, there are others, and I think that's really kind of a neat takeaway from
If you
that.
can't win the game, change the game.
That's right.
I had a somewhat similar experience. A very good friend of mine was playing. I don't even remember what it was called. It was another one of those, and they were like in a fairly high position in this guild of players, and I was like, I've always been curious about how these games work, because they always just look like garbage to me, and I don't understand how there can be dozens of them that can sustain themselves like financially, and have so many people playing them. And it was definitely a very strange experience, and it was strange how seriously everyone took it. But what's kind of, and I'm not advocating for people to go play any of these games in particular, but the reason that I didn't stick with it beyond a couple of months was I went to, well, I could just be playing EVE Online instead.
Yeah.
But the thing about these games is, like, EVE Online is a weird game because it becomes your life to an extent. Like you have to log in and play it every day. Like you have to be doing things in it all the time, in addition to having all of those political machinations going on. Whereas these mobile games capture a lot of what makes EVE Online good, but instead of also giving you 37 spreadsheets to balance every day, it's like, just tap this button, just tap these farms and get your food, and then tap this make soldiers button, and then tap the send army button, and then you can put it down for 4 hours.
Yeah, it's EVE Online in microcosm.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I think, like, the thing about the problem is that there's that paid aspect, right? Like, the problem is that you can just buy your way to victory, which is something you cannot do in EVE Online. Well, you can do it with ISK, but that's capital that has been generated within the game for the most part. So it's like there's still issues of like capitalism and wealth, but they're far more interesting because they're core to the game's economy. There's not the same external dumping of funds from an external economy to kind of imbalance things. But at the same time, like I said, Eve kind of takes over your life, and you have to spend hundreds of hours learning how to play it, which you don't have to do for Game of Thrones Conquest or like whatever flavor or theme of conquest game you're looking for. But
Right.
they're fascinating. That's
Yeah.
for sure. Good? No. Interesting? Definitely.
Yes. That's exactly where I land on it.
All right. Well, that is one game that is maybe eerily prescient with Death Stranding, and one game that you absolutely should not play with Game of Thrones Conquest. Moving on, Pat, I'm going to let you choose which game you talk about, because either one can lead into what I've got. So.
Yeah. Well, let's start by talking about both of them have their own segues into what you've got. So we'll start with a VR title that I actually picked up a while ago, but found that I had to kind of compromise on the visual quality so much to play it that I put it down. Because I had been planning on upgrading my video card this year anyway. And then I was like, that's irresponsible financially in the times we're in. And then Newegg was like, but what if there was a sale and also you didn't have to pay any interest on financing a relatively inexpensive piece of hardware for a year? So I was like, all right, fine, you got me. And ordered a card. And spent some time last night with that card and my Oculus Quest that I hooked up via the Oculus Link cable to play some Asgard's Wrath, which is was kind of heralded last year as like, this is it. This is VR's traditional game.
A lot of like really strong reviews.
40-hour role-playing game experience. And I had played like, I don't know, half hour of it prior, but last night I spent a couple hours with it and it's good. It's definitely like it's weird because if it were not a VR game, I think it would probably be a like interesting sort of experimental RPG, but ultimately not one you'd want to spend a lot of time with. Given that it's VR and there's that sort of tactile escapism to it, I think that's definitely works in its favor. But the general concept is that you are a like fledgling god of the Norse pantheon. And the game opens with a very cool sequence where there's a Kraken and you're fighting it, which is not part of Norse mythology, but whatever. They call it the Kraken. I don't really know why. Maybe they just call it the sea monster. But you have to swing your VR sword at flying boats, and you have to grab these like giant lampreys out of the air and squish them. And it's very cool.
Kiss? I grabbed two, and
I didn't try that, but you probably could. And then you end up under Loki's tutelage as this sort of like new godling, and he's reasonably well written. That's one thing that I think is surprising, is that the writing is fine. It's
how
like
similar to Tom Hiddleston does Loki look?
So not, except they gave him the same helmet. That was their visual coding to say, you know who this character is because you've seen those movies, because by giving him the exact same helmet. So that was entertaining.
Does the game come with a copy of Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology?
It does not, although it does make me want to reread that, because that is a wonderful and ultimately much better representation of Norse mythology than this game. But it's fine. This game is like, it does a decent enough job. Like it early on, you're like taken to Aegir's Hall, and like you meet Brock and Sindri and like all these characters that you know about from either playing God of War or watching Marvel movies. And it's fun. And then you kind of get into from there the core of the game, which is actually pretty smart and is very much the way to. I think it's like it's interesting because like they're not going to be able to, unless they make a sequel to this specific game, nobody else can take this game's concept and really make their own, I don't think, without it seeming kind of shameless. But the idea is that you are traveling through this pretty enormous set of world maps that are the different realms of Norse mythology. you start out in Midgard, and there's this shield maiden who wants to kill Tyr because Tyr killed her brother, and she's a mortal.
Sure.
And so you kind of, I guess technically it's not consensually at first, but it quickly becomes, you quickly gain consent for like possessing her, basically. And so when you're kind of running around Skyrimming, you're possessing these characters, and she's the first one. There are others you meet in the different realms. And they have gear sets that you're crafting by picking up crafting materials in the world and stuff. And you're kind of moving through the world in a somewhat linear, so far anyway, it might open up, but somewhat linear progression, and going into different like tomb dungeon things that are kind of brief, got some environmental puzzle solving and some combat. And you're always accompanied by, and this is one of the parts that's cool and very unique for VR. You hold a button down when you're outside of the dungeons and kind of on the overworld, and you turn back into your god form, which is like just, you're like this ghostly, super big apparition. And so it kind of gives you the ability to look around the environment like it's almost like a map view, a very zoomed in map view. But you can also pick things up. So you can pick up like animals and squish them to death, and then you get crafting parts and things like that.
That escalated.
Yeah. But one of the things you can do that Loki gives you the power to do is certain animals, like the first one they give you is you pluck a shark out of the water, and then you hold your other hand up to the shark and you zap them into being as this like anthropomorphic shark person that is also like a rogue in the classic class D&D class sense. And their ability is that they can leap on cages that have corpses hanging in them and pull those cages down to provide a weight to like, which will then like raise platforms and stuff. It doesn't make any sense that would be the switch you need, but the point is these characters, these followers that you pick up have environmental abilities that help you with solving certain puzzles. The second one you get is you turn a sea turtle into this pretty badass like sea turtle lady, and she can put a shield in front of her to block jets of fire so you can walk past them. And it all works. That stuff all works pretty well. It's a little obvious at this point. I hope that later in the game it becomes more like you actually have to think about the puzzles. It's not just fire jet there, switch to turtle lady, go there, because that's kind of what it is right now. But
I think probably because it's a VR thing and a lot of people aren't used to it. Like people who spend a lot of time in are used to it. I feel like a lot of designers are like worried about piling on too many puzzles too soon.
Exactly.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And I think they do a good job of not making it boring, even though the puzzles are hardly puzzles. It's still it's still satisfying. So it works.
It's a novel thing to actually be able to grab the thing, point and whatnot.
And there's things too, like it's novel to be able to grab your sword off of your belt and stuff. And that's fun. So far, my only real issue with it is that the combat feels a little, I still have yet to play a VR game where the combat actually feels like kinetic. It still feels like this is an issue that Skyrim VR has, and I have enjoyed playing Skyrim in VR a lot too. But you swing your sword at the enemy, and then it takes a chunk off of their health bar. Like you're not like swinging your sword at them and like cleaving them in two. That happens, but it only happens the third time you swing your sword at them and their health goes to zero. Then it has like a physics-based like slice them apart.
So you want Dead Island, but in VR?
To an extent, yes, actually. Like that's and it does exist. Those games do exist. They're just different kinds of experiences right now.
Yeah.
This is
Skyrim
very much
was not built for that.
No, and this is very much built to be more like a Skyrim than it is like those. So sometimes it feels a little ridiculous when I'm standing there and like swinging the sword back and forth like this, because that's the most efficient way to deal damage to them is not to do a big wide arcing swing. It's to like slash back and forth like you're fencing or something, because
have his touchdown approach.
Exactly. Because then you like hit them multiple times quickly to take their life down. So the combat could be better, but it's still enjoyable. And if you want to kind of role play it a little bit, like I have a shield now, so I can shield bash to stun them and then do a couple of larger sword swings. And for all I know, it might be doing more damage when you do the bigger arcing swings too. So that stuff is fine. I have run into a couple of like minor performance issues, which seem very strange because sometimes most of the time it runs really, really well. And I have the card I got was a 2070 Super. So it's pretty solid. It's not the top of the line. And occasionally though, it'll have weird like load in hiccups that are a little frustrating where everything starts to like get very jittery. The nice thing about this game that it's helping me do though, I don't know if it would for everyone, but I used to have a really hard time with movement in VR games. It would make me really nauseous to like slide around. So I could do teleportation, but teleportation to me feels bad in like shooters and RPGs. It works fine in puzzle games, but that's mostly what I've done is played like atmospheric room-based puzzle games where I can teleport around. This game actually has smooth movement, and I've been able to slowly progress to now I can stand up and play it without getting nauseous for about an hour at least, with the smooth moving around and like it has snap turning. So you use the right stick and it turns you around, and then you use the left stick to actually move, and it's starting to work for me. So I don't know that it would be useful for other people to cure their motion sickness in VR, but it actually has done a lot for me. And it has the comfort options like tunneling, which is where they cut your peripheral vision out as you move, because that's a big one for people that helps. It has like the ability to turn off any sort of camera shake, stuff like that. So it's fun so far. It has a huge checklist of stuff to do too, with like side quests and crafting mats and like there's side content to explore and things. So it seems like it is a very big thing, definitely. And I would love to see more games that kind of merge right now there's a lot of VR games that either give you the diorama look at a world and then you play it in third person, which is awesome. That's kind of my favorite in VR. But then other games that are first person, obviously, this one merges the two at times in really cool ways. And I'd like to see more of that from other VR titles.
This game has the install size is a whopping 132.97 gigabytes.
Oh my
Yep.
God.
Gosh.
What?
And I highly recommend if you get it that you play it on an SSD, because I have it on my data drive right now, which is a not a solid state, and I need to move it over today because it had like there was like a 1.5-minute long load time last night at one point.
You
And
think that
when-
might be part of the pop-in stuff?
It's
that you're
possible.
getting?
Yeah, it's very possible. So I'm going to move it over to an SSD and see if that helps, because it is one thing to like, I've also, I don't have a lot to say about it right now, but I've been playing some Red Dead Online with a friend. If you want to get into another problematic barrel of fun, but we'll talk about that later at another date. But also having a lot of fun with it too. But that game, it's like long load times as well, because I have that on a data drive, because my SSD I need to get a new one. It's pretty small. It can't handle multiple 120 gigabyte games. But anyway, when you're in a long load situation and you can look at your phone, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
When you're in a long load situation and all you can do is stare at the loading screen where it's telling you like a 2-sentence story about that time that Odin did something, it's like,
Yeah.
come on.
You're on the Oculus. You could pull up your desktop.
So the problem is that this game is performance intensive enough that like when I pull up the Oculus Home menu, it like flips out. It's like
Really?
the menu like is all like shimmery and like fades in, and then the controller tracking gets like super, super jittery. So you can't really just pull up the menu whenever.
Interesting.
But I think I need to play around with some settings too. I have the Oculus Store. I don't think it's a problem with Link.
What's your processor?
It's an i7, like 6800.
That's below the recommended processor, Pat.
I don't know if it's a 6800, but
7700 is the recommended.
might be that one. I don't even remember anymore. It's been a little bit, but anyway, it's a good game, and I recommend it for people who have if you're looking for something else to do. If you bought a VR headset for a game we may or may not talk about later, and you're looking for something else to do when you finish it, it is a good experience, and I think it's worth checking out for sure.
It is one that has had me wanting to get a VR headset. So
yeah, I definitely recommend it. But the other thing that I dove into is because of the other reason that I was interested in upgrading my card this year. But I wanted to go back to the beginning of the venerated Half-Life series, which I think pretty much everyone who listens to a video game podcast has probably played Half-Life. And so I had decided a few months ago that I was going to play original Half-Life 1, but then in the time since, I kind of put it down for a bit, and the Black Mesa fan remake, which is like sanctioned by Valve but made by fans, became fully completed 1.0 and available. So I decided to play through the game with that. And I think they did a really good job with adapting that game to some more modern visuals. I say more modern. It still is like a Source Engine game. And it's still, the character models still look like the level that they were at in Half-Life 2. So it's not like it's, next gen quality, but it's still a huge visual upgrade from what Half-Life 1 was originally. And the thing that is most impressive to me, they made some like tweaks and changes here and there I'm told that I haven't quite gotten to the very end yet, but I'm told that when you start going to Zen, that they massively overhauled the quality of those levels in terms of their design, which is great.
That's good, 'cause those levels are bad in the original.
Yeah. But in the earlier stuff, I haven't played deep enough into Half-Life recently enough to tell you how similar it is to the original from moment to moment. But it certainly feels like you're playing the original game. And what I think is most impressive is that for me, not Source Engine games. That's incorrect, because Titanfall is technically a Source Engine game.
And Apex Legends.
Yeah. Half-Life 2 in particular is not one of my favorite shooters from a like you click the button and the gun shoots stance.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite games because I think the narrative is outstanding. I think the characters are incredible. The characterization is incredible. The acting and everything, the writing, the world design, all of it is amazing. But like, I don't enjoy holding the mouse button down and shooting a machine gun in Half-Life 2 as much as I do in something like Titanfall, for example, really. And I don't know exactly what that is, but I know that it's definitely something that happened in the jump from Half-Life to Half-Life 2, because in the original Half-Life, I did enjoy the shooting quite a bit. And I think one of the most impressive things about Black Mesa is, despite being a Source Engine game that feels a little closer to Half-Life 2 to play in terms of the movement and jumping and stuff, they still managed to keep like the kinetic quality of the weapons from that first game, and they managed to keep the like differentiation between them. Part of the issue for me with Half-Life 2 is it feels like in that game the machine, I can't remember if it's like an SMG or whatever that you get, feels like a faster firing version of the pistol. The like effect of firing it looks and feels very much the same. Whereas in Half-Life, the guns tend to feel a little bit more differentiated. And they managed to achieve that with Black Mesa, despite being built on sort of the framework that Half-Life 2 is built on, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then I would also say that the other like really impressive thing is some of the lighting work that they have done for Black Mesa. Like the geometry of the levels and the characters and stuff is pretty like, mid 2000s, but some of the lighting work that they have done is incredible. Like it's interesting. I tried the Quake 2 RTX demo last night because that was something people were raving about for a while. I think I like the changes that they made to the lighting in Half-Life in Black Mesa more than the way that the RTX stuff affects Quake 2, which is saying something because Black Mesa is not using, ray tracing at all. So definitely worth checking out if you were interested in playing the original Half-Life again. That game still rocks. The story is like, it's such an interesting, it does my favorite kind of storytelling, which is environmental storytelling. There's very little exposition in that game.
That's
It's
lots of
all
skulls and toilets.
yeah.
Crowbars.
My favorite kind of storytelling: skulls and toilets.
Oh yeah.
The classics.
I have questions, Pat.
Yeah,
I have questions. I mean, I'm kind of lying to you because I played Black Mesa like 4 years ago, but
I think it's changed a lot. To be
it's
honest
probably
with you,
changed
but
a lot since then.
yeah.
Okay, so Black Mesa versus original Half-Life. Are there like 3 scientist models?
I think there's like 4 or 5, but close.
Okay, so that's an improvement.
Is
Do
it
they
though?
do they all have the same voice?
Yes.
Okay, so that's good. That's the same as the original.
Yeah.
Is every security guard Barney?
So this is one of the ways that the places that they drop the ball, I think. At one point, they don't really tell you the security guards' names. And at one point, one of them says, like, oh, something's up with Barney. Haven't heard from Barney in a while. Yeah, that's what it is. Haven't heard from Barney in a while. His debts must have caught up with him. And it's like, you're just trying to be referential and it doesn't work. Like there's another moment where you go down the bottom of this staircase that you don't actually need to go to, sort of a side area, and there's graffiti on the wall behind a pallet that you can move that says
Your
the pizza
favorite
is a lie.
environmental storytelling.
It says the pizza is a lie, which was just like, come on, just
Must you?
ugh. So there's some of that stuff that's like trying to be referential that I think is not great, but it's
Perhaps
so
Portal is the worst
periphery.
thing to happen to video games in the
Yeah.
past.
It's so on the periphery that like you can ignore it entirely. It doesn't really.
The soundtrack is by Periphery. All right,
I wish it was by periphery, but also the soundtrack does pretty much like fucking rip. Like it's a lot of like, I don't remember enough of the original soundtrack to remember if they just like use the same music or not, but it's a lot of very like 90s industrial EDM stuff that's like and then like a lot of like Crystal Method sounding stuff that just like kicks in and you get the like like
Sick.
that like
The Matrix.
really 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 evocative of like the Matrix and stuff like that as you pick up a rocket launcher and have to fight a helicopter. So it's a fun time. It's a fun way to revisit that stuff. I think the original Half-Life still holds up, and I don't know that I would say Black Mesa is like better than
the original must
Half-Life.
experience version.
No, I think it's hard to. I guess it's probably half and half, right? Because like Zen sucks in the original Half-Life. So maybe if you could play that in Black Mesa, but play the rest of the game in the original, I don't know.
If you had a 13-year-old cousin or something who had just been playing Fortnite and never
I
really
would give
touched
them
video
Black
games,
Mesa.
you would give them Black Mesa over Half-Life
sure.
1.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm just trying to say I don't think it's like for those of us who played Half-Life 1 ages ago, I don't know that Black Mesa is better, but it is certainly the way that I would hand it to people now. And I think it's worth revisiting now as its own thing.
It doesn't feel 22 years old like the original.
Yeah. The only thing that's kind of a bummer is that they and maybe they'll do this as a thing later on. I actually have a weird fondness for Blue Shift and Op4.
Oh yeah,
and
totally.
And they did not include those in this release of Black Mesa. So I will probably install Blue Shift and Opposing Forces when I am done with this and replay those. So I'll have a more direct comparison.
Maybe they'll do it. It'll just take them another 20 years.
Yeah. But it is just a lot of fun to revisit that world too. It's such a brilliant thing that like video games have tried to recreate the magic of like Half-Life's universe. And like Half-Life is like the Doom Eternal world, but like but good and not goofy, you know, like there's like tons of different alien races and there's politics happening in the stars that you're like can't even comprehend, and yet it does a better job of like representing that stuff to you and making you understand that, like just giving you bits and pieces, and then you have to kind of use your imagination to figure out the rest. So with that said, I'm very excited that there is more Half-Life media that is hopefully coming and has recently come out.
Yeah, there. In fact, just last week, was it last week? Was it this week? It was this week. It was Monday. Half-Life Alyx came out for the VR headsets,
Yeah.
the PC VR. I bet this game comes to PS5 at some point. I bet it does.
I don't think so.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
It's such a
don't
big
think so.
seller for the PC VR rather.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
there's,
They want you to buy an
that's
index.
gonna be, but that's such a limited market no matter what. Like PC is.
Since when has Valve
like,
cared?
Since they put all the effort into making the Oculus work with Steam, because apparently they do all that work and Oculus does nothing to make
doesn't
Oculus stuff
surprise me.
compatible with Steam. And
Yeah.
Steam has apparently gone, hey, so we've been doing all this work. Do you guys want to take it over? And they just don't get a response, apparently, is what I was reading. But yeah, so I picked up a Rift S because my vacation in Tokyo got canceled. Thanks, coronavirus. So as a sadness spring break treat, I bought a Rift S, which was coming in under the wire on those because they were selling out. And I picked up Half-Life Alyx, and boy, is that a neat thing. Yeah, it's like the first like real VR game I've played. I've played a lot of Beat Saber. I messed around with like Borderlands 2 VR, which I did not think was good. That made me sick, and that was teleport movement. That was weird, and not built for VR in any way. But Half-Life Alyx, pretty much from the get-go, it felt super intuitive, and part of that is the Oculus Touch controllers versus the PlayStation Move controllers. But so setup is it's 5 years before the end of Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Alex Vance, you're playing as Alex Vance, hence the name Half-Life Alyx. And you're like 19, and it's just like a normal day in the Resistance, kind of. You're on a recon mission, which is just you're sitting on a rooftop looking at the Citadel, basically. And when you spawn in, it's what Pat has as his background in this Zoom call. That's basically the first view you get, and you've got like the Combine ships flying overhead, and all that stuff like at scale in the world is super wild to look at. And with the increased fidelity compared to like Half-Life 2 and those releases from like
2004.
15, 16 years ago, it's really something to behold and kind of awe-inspiring, because I feel like most VR games I see are kind of like stylized in a way, or like more cartoony, like Asgard's Wrath. That's 132 gigs and like high res and like good visuals, but it's also it's like very
still stylized. Yeah, it's still like
and there's like it's
monsters.
Half-Life Alyx is noticeably Half-Life, like it's obviously Half-Life 2 that style, but it's just brought up to like 2020 VR quality visuals. And so the first thing I noticed when I spawned into the world is right by my side is there's a radio. Like, I wonder if I can like push these buttons. Like, oh yeah, sure enough, turn it on. Oh, there's this thing. I can pull up the antenna. Oh, something's coming through, and I can grab the dial and I can tune it. I'm like, okay, yeah, no, there's a lot going on here. And I'm like, okay, start walking around, looking around. Oh, I pick up like a bottle and I can smash it on the table and it shatters. I'm like, okay, getting used to all the VR stuff. And then one of the things that really brought it home was when I picked up a wet eraser. No, I picked up a dry erase marker and I started writing on the window. And I was like, oh, so this is what. Cause at first I tried and like wrote on like a book and nothing was coming out, and like on the table, various surfaces, nothing. And I started writing on the window. I'm like, oh, okay, here's what I can write.
What did you draw?
I wrote "fuck the police."
There you go. All right, good. That's a good use.
The Combine were raiding the streets. I was like, "Fuck the police."
Good use of the marker.
Sadly, I did not have the index controller, so I couldn't give the double middle fingers. So I just did like finger guns.
Yeah.
Have you seen the video that came out of some math professor that was doing full math lessons on that?
I saw that.
That's
so
funny.
using the markers amazing. To do math lessons. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
it's just like. Yeah, so as a first like true VR game experience, or first like of this kind, I've played other stuff in VR, but nothing like this. And like the fidelity is just really crazy. And so then you're going through your your intro tutorial thing, and the setup is once again Eli Vance is captured. This man,
I am once again asking you to rescue Eli Vance.
this man cannot stay out of trouble. One thing that was funny in this scene, I replayed the intro twice, and there's like a paint bucket like right outside, and like I kind of toss it around outside. It's like, oh, there's paint coming out, that's fun. So the second time I played through, I dropped down into this elevator, open it, and there's Combine right outside, and they're like, hey, put your hands up. But as I opened the door, I just threw the paint bucket at them, and it like bounced off. Sadly, no damage or anything. They weren't like, what the fuck, and shoot me. But it did feel pretty good, just like throw a paint bucket at a Combine soldier.
That's funny.
That sounds fun.
Did they ask you
those
to,
are like,
did they ask you to pick up a can and put it in that bin?
no.
I have
That would
I
have been very good. They should have done that. It would have been perfect.
I have one important thing I forgot about Black Mesa that'll only take 2 seconds. I can't remember if this is in the original Half-Life, but in the very beginning, you go into a bathroom at one point in Black Mesa, and there's a guy in the stall asking for toilet paper.
Yes.
And then you can pick up toilet paper and hand it to him over the stall. And I forgot if that was in the original Half-Life or not, but
It is,
it's very
but
funny.
You can't hand him it. You can't hand it to him, but it is in the original. Yes.
Yeah, so you can hand it to him in Black Mesa because it has all of the physics
That's
stuff.
nice.
So
Wow.
you can even like throw it over the stall if you want to.
Well,
Anyway,
that
sorry.
actually is a good segue into what I think is kind of my favorite part of Half-Life Alex, which
throwing
is
toilet
the
paper?
Yeah,
Yeah.
throwing anything and everything actually. So kind of the main gimmick is, I don't know if it's the main gimmick, but one of the thing that I'm enjoying is the Russells, which are the gloves, which kind of take the gravity gun stuff. But they're like, early prototype gravity gun things where you point at something in the world and then you can flick it towards you and then you can grab it in midair. But if you don't like push the button, if you don't push the button, you won't grab it. So, but the very first thing they do is they throw a gun at you, but that like is supposed to miss because it's like, oh, it's unloaded, and then it fires. It's like, oh, now it's unloaded. But then he throws Russell, the guy who made him, throws like magazines to you, and you're grabbing those out of the air.
Cool.
And that becomes like mastering that becomes a major part of like getting through the combat encounters and solving puzzles as you're like, oh, okay, I'm out of ammo, hit the button, drop the clip, like grab ammo from across the room, slam it into my gun, cock it back, and then keep firing. You do like store ammo behind you, but it feels way cooler to pull it from across the room and just keep going nonstop like that. So like, I think the combat has been pretty cool. Again, as someone who's not played a ton of VR stuff, but like the iron sights, and like having to like get the gun up to my face and like look through and really aim down has been a neat novelty. I've heard from some people that it's not like that new for VR stuff. So I don't know. I've heard like both it's like much better than other VR games, and then it's not as like advanced as some other VR stuff. So I'm not sure where that falls yet.
My understanding is that it's doing a lot of stuff that other VR games have done, but it's just doing them much better than
That's my impression.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like I'm a few hours in. I don't know exactly how. I think it's supposed to be like 15 hours long. I feel like I'm like 4 hours in.
Yeah.
And I think the thing I'm surprised by is how unscared I am by it, because like I'm going through dark, disgusting, like weird biogrowth sewer sections with like the head crabs and the weird things with the tongues on the ceiling, whatever those are called.
So many of those in Black Mesa. Ugh.
Yeah, the barnacles.
They're so gross.
And it's like I'm going through these.
Do they
like
spit out
super
skulls when you kill them?
Oh yeah. They spit out ammo. They
And
spit out
ribs.
skulls. They spit out all sorts of stuff. But I'm going through these areas and I like pitch black. I don't like the dark in real life, like, but horror games I can like get through, but then if they're too scary, like Half-Life 2 at the time felt pretty like terrifying, and like Ravenholm.
Oh yeah,
Like,
that sequence fucked me up.
But here I haven't gotten so much of that, and I think part of that is because head crabs and barnacles are a known quantity.
Sure.
Like, you know, I've played Half-Life. I know what a head crab is, what it does.
Yeah. There's plenty of attempts at that kind of horror in Black Mesa as well. And I haven't found it to be even the least bit like bothersome because it's so easy to deal with them that I think that's probably what part of it.
Like there is like the frantic, like, oh, I turned a corner and there's like a zombie right here. So I feel like, okay, I got to back up and get around this corner and like, oh no, I'm out of ammo and like trying to put everything together at a time can feel a little frantic. But so far I'm really enjoying my time with it.
That's great.
Yeah, so there's something, so listening to Waypoint Radio, Patrick Klepek talked about at some point there's like a kind of like a Mr. X type enemy or like a big bad who you probably can't kill. And then like you have to stop yourself from coughing. But I think I've found a workaround to that. I haven't gotten to that part, but I think I found a like in-game mechanic workaround to what they were talking about. Because like apparently there's a mechanic where you like hold your hand up to your face to stop yourself from coughing because he's got like a poison cloud or something.
Is it Wario?
It's Wario, yeah. Wario's in this game. It's a crossover.
Oh my god, does he fucking die?
Wario gets killed by AlexVance.mp3.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's actually the most terrifying thing that happened to me was a Vortigaunt sticking his face out of a door, and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot about you. It's like, what are you? And I think at the time I was carrying around like, you know, the health machines. I don't know if they're in Half-Life 1, I don't remember, but like they have the weird like bugs in them.
They don't have the weird bugs in Half-Life 1, but it's the same concept.
So they're already carrying around this bug thing because I didn't realize that you have a wrist pocket on both hands. I thought it was only on the right hand for some reason. So I was going through like multiple levels carrying like a thing in my left hand and then a gun in my right hand and then having to drop the thing in my left hand to like reload and then pick it back up and just going through. Then I found out, oh, I can put something in my left wrist.
Here's how I know you're very deep in a VR game, because you just casually said the term wrist pocket as if that's just a thing that everyone has all the time.
So I keep my stim packs in my wrist pockets and my grenades.
And lifesavers.
Yeah. So it's also one of the coolest, like throwing things in this game feels really good.
That's
like
good.
All the physics on throwing things feel nearly perfect.
That's actually like the biggest issue with Asgard's Wrath. There's this mini game in the bar that you return to as kind of like a weird little hub that you have to throw axes at these targets, and the throwing is terrible. It's fine because most of the game you don't have to engage with it, so it's not like it mostly just comes up in this mini game. You can throw your sword at things in the full game, but it is like you throw like and release, and then it like just throws it at the ground every single time right in front of you. And so it's good to hear that this game has more natural throwing mechanics.
So I don't know how they made it feel so natural, but like one of the puzzles was like, oh, I have to throw a grenade into this grate and then it'll like blow up and then it'll open the door. And I was first try like, oh, grenade, boop, and then in there, and I was like, oh, that felt really cool, because I don't think I could have done that. I don't think I could have done that in real life, but it's sure easy in the game.
It sounds like it would be super cool if they adapted this stuff to some kind of a multiplayer thing.
Yeah, sure.
I hope somebody I know that they've said that like modding tools and generally all this stuff is going to be available for people to work with in Source 2.0.
Yeah,
it would be cool if somebody took like the core of this game and made it into something multiplayer, same physics and feel.
Yeah, I bet they do. People are already working on modding in like non-VR version support. But that this game would not be anything special without VR, I think.
Yeah.
Like, because like the combat stuff is like you've got a handful of enemies at a time. Like the cool, like it's almost immersive simmy in a way, like the way you're going through and you're able to like open drawers and look for ammo and stuff like that. But it's a very much more condensed version of that kind of thing, just because scale wise, I think they were like, we don't want to overwhelm the players. Maybe I'm not sure what the philosophy was there, but it's not like these huge open areas. It's much more like, okay, here's like some corridors with some rooms off to the side to like find stuff to do puzzles. So
I think-
you're not, yeah, I don't know.
Part of what's so exciting about this to me too is that I'm sure this game's been in development for a bit, but it feels like they announced it and put it out pretty reliably. Like it didn't sit in, I fully expected this to get like old school Valve treatment where it would get delayed and where you would be like waiting for it forever and then it would finally come out eventually, but it just kind of like got announced and then they made a thing. And it makes me wonder if like they've brought in such incredible talent from people like your Brad Mears and the Campo Santo folks that are just good at making video games
and know how to finish a video game.
Yeah, exactly. And it seems like that had a
What a
huge
concept.
impact on this project. And I was reading about some of the stuff that some of the Campo folks were making and doing for the game. And they seemed like deeply involved with
were there
core
like
elements.
nude teens off in the distance at some point in the game where I can throw a radio into the lake?
Yep.
That's a really weird reference for anyone who has not played Firewatch.
But it's accurate.
That's Campo Santo trademark right there.
I hope that this game is sort of a flashpoint for a lot of conversations around VR in general, from like financial accessibility and accessibility for using the tools if you're someone who lives with a disability, because it's such a tough thing.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's all quite there yet. Like I really love Half-Life 2 a lot, and Alex Vance is one of my favorite video game characters ever. But just the financial issues, the space issues, the I know a lot of people are saying this is generally better for motion sickness, but I have had pretty bad experiences with my PSVR about it. So it's like there's just there's so many levels of issues with VR that I think should be like, I don't think that means that you should stop making games in VR, but I think it's something to keep in mind.
Well, like Jeff, you had tweeted about something, like I've thought a lot about like physical disability as it relates to VR and things like Alex, one thing that's cool, it's not a total solution, but a cool step in the right direction that they did think about was there's a one-handed mode. So little things like that, but I hadn't even considered the subject of like sensory disability or conditions the way that you were talking about. So sort of things like that are just, we need more conversation about them, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when I was watching, I think I was watching someone like Jacksepticeye or someone like that, where just playing through Half-Life Alyx, and immediately I thought, oh my God, my partner could not play this. There's too much stimuli. I would have a hard thing with it because, so full disclosure, I have a really hard time seeing depth due to being a stroke survivor. And so like, I'm thinking about VR in this way of like, all right, this is pretty cool, but I keep reading about, what is it called? The Vergence, God, hold on. Like the Vergence, I want to say transmission effect.
It has to do, I think that has to do with IPS settings, maybe, where you're like
to do with the IP setting, but then it's also
IPD,
like a bleed effect in reality.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
What ends up happening is you get used to the tactile feel in VR.
I have experienced that back when I was playing VR like daily. Yeah.
Right. And then you just wang your hand on, or your head, wherever you go. And then I think around the time that I was sort of thinking this through, Nathan Grayson on Kotaku published this fascinating yet horrifying article called "Playing Nothing But Half-Life Alyx in VR Made Me Hallucinate." And speaking to that piece, Andre, Did you hallucinate? Are you there yet?
I have not put that much time in like a single session into the game. It's broken up into like fairly digestible chunks, I'd say.
Okay.
And so usually like if I finish a level or two, I'll like take a quick break, check messages or something, make sure I'm not like missing something from the girlfriend. And also I've tried to play mostly when my girlfriend's been out, just to, make sure I'm being attentive to her, but she starts up work on Monday. So I'm going to actually dive back in and probably put in a lot of time the rest of this week, try and finish it.
Okay.
I will say kind of to that, like, it's not the same as hallucinating, but it is to that effect you're talking about. There was a period when, a bit of a time after the Vive came out, but I found myself living in an entire house by myself, in like a small but still 3-bedroom house, because my roommate at the time ended up buying a house. So they like moved out, even though we had signed the lease together for a year. So I had this apartment for like 8 months, or this house for 8 months, and I was the only one living in it. So I made one of the rooms into a Vive room, naturally, which just like had my computer tower and then a monitor sitting on top of it, and then the Vive. And that was like the whole room. So I could move around this whole space. And I played VR like 7 days a week for hours. It was basically like I was either working or playing VR, because I was single at the time and frankly like suffering from like depression worse than I had in other parts of my life. So I kind of just shut people out and lived in VR a lot. And one, not real good for treating depression, I will say. It's a good escapism. I would say limit your time in VR, as fun as it is. Two, I will say it did breed the best moment in VR that I've ever had, which was I was playing Job Simulator and I was having a very good time, and I had to get down on the ground to pick up something that I had dropped in the restaurant bit of Job Simulator. And then I tried to get back up by putting my hand on the countertop, which wasn't there in the physical world, but I definitely committed fully to. So then I just like face planted, and then I started laughing, and then I sat up and then proceeded to do it again.
That's
That's
amazing.
beautiful.
I can say that sometimes being fully convinced that you're in that space has
That's
its
presence.
moments. But
I've had like brief moments where I've felt like, okay, I'm going to grab this thing. Oh wait, that thing's not there.
what I think is so hard about this stuff too is, like I if I had to guess, I would, having listened to and followed a lot of the folks that worked on Half-Life Alyx, I'm sure that it is not a lack of care that it contributes to the issues and difficulties surrounding accessing this game for so many people, whether it's because of disability or just because the stuff is expensive to get. But what is challenging is that because of the financial barrier, it's so hard to put the tools in the hands of people who know how to solve those problems, or who could figure out how to solve those problems, which is what is the most necessary to fix them. So I really hope that, and I think Valve is in such a unique position to be able to do this because they have such a cushion of cash to be able to invest. I think it would be so great if they were to invest in really leading the industry in like developing these tools to fit for people with different abilities across the spectrum. So I don't know. I'm really at this point, I'm still in the hopeful optimism phase that Alyx is the thing that kind of starts that conversation in earnest. We'll see if we'll get back to that in 6 months. Let's see where we're at.
Yeah. Considering that a lot of us disabled folk, we're a little endangered at the moment. We'll that way, because this whole like you have to sacrifice your life for the downline. Apologies. My cat is being
frequent animal guests on this show. So, and I think to that point, like I would be so fascinated to hear, even if your takeaway was this is too much. It's difficult to perceive depth or whatever it may be, but I can't ask you to spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars to get there to that point. So that's, I think, kind of what I'm getting at is I just wish that there was a way for people who have the ability to lead that conversation to have access to the tools to do it. And I don't know how you do that. I'm not.
I mean, I guess
logistics,
like, but it could be. I don't want to say it's simple, but like there are places like Able Gamers where it's like,
right.
Hey, FYI, go like I kind of side eye any major publisher or developer that doesn't work with Able Gamers.
Of course, yeah,
and that includes Nintendo, who I play a lot of. Like, I love Nintendo games, but that is like my biggest issue with them is that they don't more actively work with that. So like I think like there's work with VR, and it's so hard with VR, but there are places like that where you can at least make a start to make things more accessible.
Yeah. And I just hope that there's still a push, an industry push to get people to do that. And that it doesn't just get lost in a few months after this game isn't, doing numbers for headlines and stuff. Mm-hmm. And of course, the push has to come from Valve too. I'm not trying to shift responsibility off of them. They're the ones who make the thing and make the hardware. They make the lead hardware that the game is promoted on, and they make the game. So it's really the impetus is on them to create that. So hopefully now is this, to your point, Jeff, now is this particularly difficult time to ask anyone, especially folks living with disability, to come down to Bellevue and the epicenter of the Corona outbreak and start doing work. But hopefully that happens once, I'm going to say once we get through all of this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that is Half-Life Alyx. And now had a nice balmy 2 hours and 15 minutes into our podcast.
The news is always faster than the games.
Yeah, we'll see.
And again,
there is a lot of news, but yeah.
I think half of this we can sum up in 2 words, but I'm not
direct.
That's not what I was talking about.
Well, yeah, let's get into the news. My second time talking about a lot of this news this week, but all right, let's start off with a couple news stories about everybody's favorite game retailer.
Oh boy,
GameStop.
And those 2 words were "fuck GameStop." Moving on.
I think we were saying that last week, weren't we?
Yeah, we did.
Oh,
that
yeah.
Was the news last
we
week.
100%, and it's still valid today.
Yeah.
So
it's that whole plastic bag around the hands thing.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
It's a 3-part story.
Yeah. So last week, I believe we were at the point where GameStop was saying we are essential business because we sell things that businesses can use, like microphones and headphones for work from home. No. Nobody's going to GameStop to buy a Turtle Beach so they can call into their Zoom call for work.
I feel weird about my business being called an essential business, and we sell appliances and grocery and a specific grocery item, but still a grocery item. So if I feel weird about it, GameStop should.
Oh, well, the employees, I'm sure, were feeling weird about it. Yeah. But eventually they were forced or decided, it's unclear. There was a story that Pennsylvania revoked their business license, but then it sounds like that wasn't true. Anyway, they eventually closed all their stores at some point this week, and then doing only curbside pickup or whatever, I believe. And now they're permanently closing 320 stores. They announced this week. I wonder how much of this is actually because of coronavirus and how much of this is fiscal year end.
I'm guessing it's not much at all about coronavirus.
Yeah, this is something they needed to do anyway as part of restructuring the company.
I think this was just, they were at a very delicate balance.
Yep.
And all of this just sent all of their projections straight downwards, and they're like, nope, okay, cutting the cord.
Yep.
I talked about it briefly last week, but the biggest problem that GameStop has had, the biggest business problem that GameStop has had is that there's just the saturation was just off the charts. And like I it's a bit of I'll say it quickly, but like when I was working at the GameStop that I worked at in Ann Arbor, Michigan, there were like 5 GameStops within a 10-minute drive of each other. So what's the point?
Can confirm.
It was bad.
But so Andre, the first part was that they came to their senses and they closed the retail stores. The second part was that they permanently closed 320 stores. What was the third part?
GameStop apparently told employees to go back to work. I have to sneeze. I'm allergic to bullshit. Go back to work and just wrap a plastic bag around one of their hands and allow customers to make purchases at the door. So they take the credit card with the plastic bag hand.
Into the plague den. No offense to GameStop
just
employees.
do online purchases only, like online in-store pickup only. Like if you're going to go to that point, like
so dumb.
That is the dumbest.
dumb.
Plastic bags are known for being sanitary.
Yeah, especially if you're reusing the same one over and over.
Which I'm sure they were definitely not doing, because I'm sure that GameStop provided them with many plastic bags.
Oh, I mean, they have plastic bags in the store, probably.
I'm sure they were encouraged to use them a different one every time and not use the same one over and over again.
Yep. So, hey, fuck GameStop.
Hey, yep. We can still stand by that one.
Up until like 2 weeks ago, I was still very much in the like, well, you know, if a small rural town in Arkansas has a place to go play Dungeons and Dragons because of the way they're rebranding, that's great. Now I'm just like fully fuck GameStop. Just
that's literally a conversation we were having 2 weeks ago because of Reggie joining. We were like, oh, maybe they'll turn it around.
Yeah.
Nope. I mean,
hopefully they'll die, and then there can be local game stores that arise in their place.
Yeah. This whole corporate thing is Reggie still isn't like officially on board, I believe. Like he comes on next month, I believe.
Good luck, boy.
If the company is still around.
It's important to also keep in mind
he is one person.
He's one person on the board, and like the actions of the company don't necessarily reflect him.
That's true.
So I'm not saying you have to cancel Reggie for being a part of that organization.
No, cancel him for the Bigfoot pizza.
That's like the 7th time you've made that reference on this podcast.
I don't think I ever talked about a Bigfoot pizza prior to this year on this podcast.
He has admitted it was a failure. So I'm just, I don't know. Yeah, that's my only thing with Reggie's Bigfoot pizza. I've said it before, I'm not like as enamored with Reggie as many people are. He seems like a nice guy, but I am just kind of like weirded out by him. I don't know. He's got chaotic energy, and I don't know if I like it. All right.
There's something hiding behind those deep pools. His eyes. I'm talking about his eyes.
The
pools are his
thank
eyes.
you.
Wow.
Pools of blood that he bathes in.
This went a little Elizabeth Bathory. Okay.
All right.
What's next, Andre?
Speaking of Reggie and his employers, his former employer, Nintendo, dropped a mini direct on Thursday.
Whenever Jeff Grubb said it was going to be.
When Jeff Grubb says it'll be, that's when the direct is.
Do you think you got the tip from Hot Video Girl 69?
Maybe. That's that. God. They also were.
I was going to say Google that, but Googling that's not going to help you.
You gotta search it on Twitter. Just look for Matt Rory's ats. And
yes. Look for the ats of one Matthew Rory and you'll find.
Anyway, so they announced a whole bunch of ports and a few new games coming to the Nintendo Switch.
Yep.
Or like dates for ports that are known on some of them.
And just a little bit more information too. Like
there was like BioShock,
DLC.
Borderlands, and XCOM, right? There was those 3 for 2K.
That's like 9 of the games right there.
Then
one day we'll hit the most important.
I mean, literally,
game on
that is 9
list.
But I don't know. I think that it's not necessarily the most exciting direct, but at the same time, I know that people were just like, "Where's Direct, Nintendo?" So went
Yeah.
for it.
People
And-
are just starved for any news from Nintendo at all times for some reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
and
It's
it's weird in my opinion.
Like it's gonna be in a week. People are gonna be like, "When's the next direct Nintendo?"
yeah, exactly.
But like I don't know. Like
Well,
some
this
of the
was a
games that
mini.
he-
They want a full.
Yeah, exactly. Not good enough.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but I don't know. Like I know that you weren't very impressed, but there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm like, I'd play that. And
I mean,
I
like,
want the Nintendo games, and there was nothing in there that was like I don't know.
ARMS.
There was ARMS is free for Nintendo Switch Online subscribers.
which I installed.
A trial.
I'm gonna
is free.
finally try ARMS.
I've already tried ARMS in
It's
the
all right.
past.
That's all right. I don't
As
know.
a
have
friend
Still-
who
I
still
have
the
ARMS.
best.
loves ARMS.
You
It's
do
all
have
right.
you do have arms.
Yeah.
For now.
Um, Xenoblade Chronicles.
I'm excited about that because
Yeah.
I played a little bit of it on 3DS and went, I don't want to play this game on 3DS, and then
Yeah.
have just been waiting ever since.
I
Bruh.
played a lot of 2, but
The first one's very different, actually.
Port Xenoblade Chronicles X to Switch,
Yeah.
you coward.
Hopefully that'll happen next.
Bravely
Everyone
Default.
buy Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, so they'll port Xenoblade Chronicles
Yeah.
X.
Yeah.
I think
Jeff, I
that
know you had some thoughts on Xenoblade.
Yeah. So one of the things that I'd be thrilled by was that Xenoblade Chronicles was not available beyond the use of the 3DS, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
And like the new 3DS, wasn't it?
yeah. You
Yeah,
had to
you
have
had to
the
have
like
the new
fancy the
3DS.
one with the better
The new
processor.
fancy
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, like, as like, I'm a Xeno fan. I'll just go ahead and say that I got on board with Xenogears because I'm like, you know what, Evangelion was too Freudian. Give me my Jung and Nietzsche. Thank you very much.
What about like a Xenoverse 2?
Right, exactly. And
Stop it! This train is
So-
not changing the tracks. I'm not talking about Dragon Ball.
Damn.
So the idea of having Xenoblade Chronicles on like a modern console that you can actually play it on and see it on on a larger screen than the 3DS is actually fairly exciting. Plus, what I'm hoping is with that epilogue, we start to get more of Soraya Saga's original writing sort of get back in. And once we have Saga's writing, hopefully we can sort of start to move forward with the kind of pieces that ended up getting truncated with the whole mess that was Xenosaga Episode 3. Where randomly Jesus and Mary Magdalene was there. It's a long story.
play those
That sounds
games,
like a
too.
Japanese RPG.
That sounds like the kind of Japanese RPG bullshit that I want to experience too.
Yeah, it's
I never got into that series, but
well, you know what? If you ever have any lore questions,
I'll
I'm
let you
your
know.
person.
All right.
I don't even know how you would play the original Xenogears at this point.
We're gonna come to this podcast in a year, and Pat's gonna be on like our 3rd episode of him talking for an hour about Xenogears.
Xenogears is the only platform the original Xenogears is on is the original PlayStation. There is no other way
Well,
to
when the
play
PlayStation 5 is backwards compatible.
it. I'll just I'm not gonna do that. Sorry. Anyway,
All right. So, other games people are excited about from this direct?
I'll try Bravely Default too.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Yeah.
That demo's out.
I haven't picked the demo, but I really want to go back and play the other Bravely games plus this one, mostly because I'm still in a constant state of like Octopath Traveler 2 when, so this might scratch that itch for me.
Interestingly, they're doing the same thing they did with Octopath, which is putting out the demo and then taking feedback
Yeah.
and to use to adjust the experience.
The
Did not end up caring for Octopath enough to fully finish it, but it seemed like them taking the feedback to make it a better game.
the original I liked Octopath, but also it didn't grab me in the same way that it grabbed you, Allison. But Bravely Default I was really into that original one. I actually didn't finish it, but I did play like 60 or 70 hours of it. And it's pretty good. So
I still can't believe they made a game called Bravely Second, and
Yeah.
that's not
And then-
the sequel,
And then Bravely Default 2. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
weird.
it's pretty great.
It's like some Nomura shit.
Ring
It's
Fit.
weird that King's Bounty 2 is coming out on the Switch.
Yeah.
That was
The biggest head scratcher for me of the whole thing.
You know, the sequel to the 1990, what was it, 1990?
Yeah,
It's
something
old.
like that.
It's old.
Yes.
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. There wasn't a ton of other stuff that I found that exciting, but it was a smattering of things.
I'll check out the Ring Fitted update, but other than that,
Most people will not because they still can't buy it.
yep.
I think we're
Pod Racer. That's what you're.
Yeah,
excited
we're
about,
missing the
Pat.
most important thing. Star Wars Racer is now available on the Nintendo Switch, which means that the Switch has finally found its killer app.
More or less fog.
Hopefully more.
I don't know. The PC version looked way nicer than the N64 version, so I'm
Is
hoping
that an
it's closer to
improvement
that.
or
There's less fog.
So do you want it to look more like the N64 or more like the PC?
I want it to
version?
look more like the
Okay.
PC version.
No,
Howard.
N64 version. That was like, it's honestly one of my most
I
nostalgic
want it
games for me.
in
So I'm
VR
like,
so I can. Yeah, now this is pod racing.
Hell yeah, VR pod racing games should happen. The fact that it has not happened yet
God,
is
it'd be-
deeply upsetting, but it's because of the maybe now that the last Star Wars movie is out and it sucks, we can get back to like Star Wars
We can
movies
get back
that
to
suck
good
but are
Star
good.
Wars.
man,
Yeah,
getting back to
episode
good
1.
Star Wars sounds good.
Dude, I would watch episode 1 10,000 times before I watched The Rise of Skywalker again. You have no idea.
Honestly,
Man.
I don't disagree.
Episode 1 is significantly better than The Rise of Skywalker.
Also, I feel like
Got Big Daddy Boss Nass.
Exactly.
the thing about episode 1 too is that there are just so many memes, and it's so like I have no issue with watching
Wait.
it to just be like,
Do you think
This
they
is
could
it.
ever? Do you think they could ever make an episode 1 too?
What is this?
Yeah,
Final Fantasy?
if Square makes
I
it or
hope.
something.
That would be so much. I'd be so much more interested in that.
But they'd have to bring Lucas back to do it.
That honestly, it would probably be an improvement.
Anyway,
I mean, isn't that like Clone Wars?
You know what? You know what's interesting is so I've been watching a lot of. I won't make this too long of a tangent, but I've been watching a lot of Westworld and catching up on it. And I really like Westworld. It turns out. And I didn't realize until I was almost finished with the first season that that's Jonathan Nolan and J.J. Abrams who produced the show.
Hmm.
And it made me just realize that like J.J. Abrams is such a better producer than he is a director. Like let that dude produce all day, but keep him away from actually sitting behind the camera. Anyway.
all right. Well, unless anyone else has any thoughts on this Nintendo Direct Mini, means there could still be a full one lurking
Yep.
around the corner
We're
anytime now.
We're waiting for Nintendo Direct Mickey now.
I'm not
We're gonna get
rewarding
Disney
that.
breathing down our necks.
That's, you know what? You're right. Kingdom Hearts, they need to announce the Kingdom Hearts game
oh god,
we know is in development.
Actually,
it's
oh my
being
God.
made.
No,
it
there
has
was
to be made.
some interview. I think it was in No, it wasn't Famitsu. It was in some recent like article that came out. It was an interview with Nomura, and he was talking about like the Verum Rex stuff from Kingdom Hearts 3 and how he like wants to build
Hell
that
yeah.
out.
Hell yeah.
And that was like based on Final Fantasy Versus 13. And
Of course it was.
God, yeah.
Oh man.
So
I-
I was seeing all this on like Twitter chat through like people reading a translated article or like, yeah, I don't know, man.
I still haven't played Kingdom Hearts, that DLC for Kingdom Hearts 3. I need to do that.
Me neither, and I don't think I will.
I don't want you to. Chris Edgerton and I could just talk about Kingdom Hearts by ourselves.
I could talk about it. I just
I don't want to hear your
play it.
opinions anymore.
That's fair. Well, you can hear my opinions about Games Done Quick postponing Summer Games Done Quick, which normally takes place in July.
Yep.
Did they have a location picked already? They must have said.
Yeah.
I'm sure, yeah.
I can't remember where it is, but I imagine so.
But they have delayed it into August, just a month-long delay. But probably smart because nobody knows when the shelter in place stuff is going to end, quarantine when it'll be like really safe to travel. It might get postponed again. It might get canceled. But in the meantime,
Probably.
it won't get canceled. It'll just end up like what they're doing in April, which is an online event for coronavirus relief. I can't remember the exact charity, but they're going to be doing a online only speedrunning event for coronavirus relief.
Yeah.
So
cool.
That's really good.
Yeah.
What are the dates on that? Does anyone have them?
April sometime. I don't remember.
Let's see if I can pull it up here.
I'm looking as well. April 17th to 19th.
Okay. April 17th to 19th. Sadly,
Sorry, Allison.
there will be no Resident Evil 3 run yet, at least not the new Resident Evil 3, because submissions close the day before it comes out, and no one will have had time to actually run it and try and speed run it yet. So,
yeah.
But I assume by summer that'll be
a live speed run.
Yeah. That would blind run, so you can do it blind race. That would be the thing to see. But I played that demo. I'm very excited about that game because they changed the mechanics enough from 2 to make it actually like exciting again. So that's neat. Anyway, next, I think maybe you can speak to this, Alex. Hackers stole the Xbox Sex source code. I think it's the graphics code specifically, and put a ransom on it for $100 million.
Yeah, basically some hacker got in there and was like, oh shit, look at all this proprietary code I have from AMD stuff.
Yeah.
So now they're like talking to AMD and Microsoft being like, hey, if you guys don't want this released, pay me $100 million. That's literally
it was posted on GitHub.
Oh, was it? I didn't see that part.
I believe they posted it. It was posted on GitHub and then removed, but also like posted some other places.
It's bizarre. I don't really know
like
what
as
they
proof
can,
or something.
I don't really know why that matters, because SDKs will be out there in a couple months anyways.
Yeah, AMD was like, there's no trade secret stuff in there.
Yeah,
it seems like a weird
valuable
thing to really ransom for that much.
Well, I mean, if you think you've got something that they don't want out there, but then
but
if
shoot
AMD's
lower. I would have been like, tell you what, like $1 million, and then Microsoft's just like, yeah, whatever.
AMD is in a weird spot, but they're in like a competitive position again, and supposedly their next graphic stuff is supposed to be pretty good. People are saying it's supposed to be the NVIDIA killer.
Doesn't have anything on DLSS 2.0.
They have DLSS 3.0. Who knows?
Dang. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird story. I don't think it's gonna matter.
Yeah, I don't think it is either.
Like I said, in a few months, SDKs are going to be out there, and that's basically what the SDK is, and anyone can get access to an SDK.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever.
Next up, we've got Sega's 60th anniversary on Wednesday.
No, it was Wednesday.
It was
So,
Sega's 60th anniversary on Wednesday.
happy
I want
60th anniversary.
all y'all's favorite Sega memories.
Space Channel 5.
Not having to have a Sega system.
Damn. All right.
I'm just kidding. I like Phantasy Star just fine.
Phantasy Star 4. The whole thing.
4. Wow. Okay. Allison?
Going to somebody's house as a kid and being desperately jealous that they had a Dreamcast, which in hindsight is very funny.
I do have a real one, and that's that at my dentist office when I was a kid, they had a Genesis, I guess it was, and I played The Lion King on it from start to finish one time, and that was fun.
I had a Game Gear and religiously played the game Surf Ninjas. It's a good game.
Okay, I'll take your word for that.
50 AA batteries later.
Yes, exactly.
I am a fan of the Japanese Sega Saturn commercials with Sega to Sanshiro.
Yeah.
It's got real good music. You should look those up. There's like a 10-minute compilation of all of them. There's one of them. It's like Christmas morning. All these kids are like, "Oh, it's Santa! He's here!" And then he rips off his mask and it's Segata Sanshiro, and they're like, I want a skateboard, I want a stuffed animal. He's like, no, you get a Sega Saturn.
Don't want this.
It's just like a guy in like a karate gi or like some sort of gi, and he's just like beating people up, and there's explosions behind him. It's very like 80s 90s whatever the Saturn was. I don't know.
That's amazing.
Yeah, very good.
80s.
I don't know. Well, when was the Saturn out?
It was
It was
like
like
PlayStation
it was like the same time as the PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So 90s. Anyway, our last news story of the week is Epic Games using that Fortnite money once again to branch out more in the world of games. They're starting a publishing wing.
Yeah.
They've bought studios like, was it People Can Fly, but now they're just doing publishing with some pretty attractive terms, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that makes this exciting to me. I'm not like Alex and I talked about this a little bit. I'm wary of Epic in general.
Yes, 100%.
But at the same time, like they're courting partners that I really like, between Playdead and Remedy in particular. And then Gen Design is also a cool get. And the fact that the studios retain IP is ownership is like the part to me that makes this actually very exciting, because I would love to see what a studio like Remedy does with a lot of funding when they can like hold on to the IP. I say as a Alan Wake fan who, maybe we'll finally get some more closure on that soon, but it was a long time with none of that. And so, yeah. And then like the revenue sharing seems like it's better terms than most publishers offer.
Yeah. So they fully fund the project with development, salary, market expense, QA, localization, and publishing. And then once those costs are all recouped, it's 50-50, at least 50-50 percent profit sharing. So suppose like people like Rami Ismail were on Twitter saying this is actually a pretty sick deal for the profit sharing. So
it seems interesting. I also am slightly wary because I worry if Epic becomes the next Activision or Ubi or EA. But like then again, EA partners, when that was a thing, they actually did pretty well by their partners as well. So I hope this is like that but better.
Yeah, and they're saying full creative freedom and ownership. So like make your game, we'll fund it. They're probably being like, they're like taking pitches obviously and like, okay, yeah, we think this will do well. But
I think part of my reason for being excited about this too is like my bias is pretty, like there were rumors going around that Sony was looking at Remedy, and the idea of Sony buying Remedy is just like devastating to me. Because that's a studio that I think their independence is like so vital to the stuff that they make at this point. And I would hate to see them locked up by a platform holder. At least with Microsoft, their games go more places, but like knowing that like, oh, if I want to play more Remedy games, I'm going to have to keep buying PlayStations would have sucked. So I think it's exciting to see this announcement specifically for those studios in particular, because they were all kind of like ones you could see Sony acquiring.
And so they announced Remedy has said they're working on 2 games, both in the same like space. One is like a smaller project though, like same franchise. I don't know exactly what they said, but
Quantum
2
Break
games.
2
and Quantum Break 2.5.
Quantum Break 2
Quantum
and the TV show
Quantum Break 2.
Birth After Sleep.
Playdead, creators of Limbo and Inside, have also been teasing a new game.
Hey, that'll come out in another 10 years then.
You know what I'd love to see Playdead do?
Which sex doll manufacturer are they going to partner with this time?
Well, they already have. Why wouldn't they just go back to Real Doll?
I Maybe.
Play. I want to see.
Remember
Play
that
Dead.
got delayed. Maybe that was like a bad.
Did that thing ever come out?
Yes.
Yeah.
It came out.
Yeah,
right?
it did.
Yeah.
It did.
The
It was
weird
big. It was
flesh
a big
ball.
It was the
flashball,
flesh ball.
Yeah. Yeah.
which of course it was.
Yeah, like it couldn't have been anything else.
Oh yeah, we
but-
knew that that's what it was going to be.
I was still like, I want to see it.
Do you want to feel it?
Like it's that guy from Rogue One who wants to touch Jabba.
No, I think it would be fun to see Playdead do something that's like actually like happy and
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not going to
I-
happen.
I
That'd
would
be
like
weird,
to, I don't
actually.
need to see them do something happy, but I would like to see something outside of that 2D platformer space. I would
Yeah,
like to
that'd
see
be
them like
interesting, too.
take a.
oh, they could make a
tack.
cool VR game.
Sure,
I'm sure that's not what they're doing with this deal, but that would
but
be cool.
I would like to see them. I mean, there's no VR section on the. Epic
No,
Games
it's not.
Store yet,
That's not.
so-
Epic would not be publishing something VR. But
But I just want to see them get out of that space just to do something different. I think
Sure.
Inside was very good. I didn't care for Limbo, but
see, it's funny. I like Limbo, and Inside just didn't. It,
Mhm.
Yeah, didn't do it for me.
different strokes, different folks.
Yeah.
And then Gen Design, talk about games we won't see for 10 years.
Yeah.
Gen Design is headed up by Fumito Ueda, the creative director of The Last Guardian, and like the Team Eco Games, I believe, is the general his general history.
It takes
So-
time to harvest the trauma necessary for this.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the first three they've announced, and probably the last three games that will come out before the heat death of the universe.
I don't think it's going to be the heat death of the universe.
Yeah.
Just the
The pandemic death of us all.
yeah. Yeah.
Sooner than you think. I
Yep.
wonder what other studios would be cool. Like, I would like to see what that game company would do under them, because like I feel like that game company hasn't shown up anywhere recently.
They
made that Sky game.
Was that Sky? Yeah, that
Oh, did they?
non-combat
Destiny, like
looter.
it's
flyer.
it's a looter flyer. Yeah, it's a looter glider.
I never saw that.
It's a phone
A
game,
glooter. It's a
Oh.
glooter.
but it's coming
yeah,
to Switch,
Sky.
so you can play
Yeah,
on
you're right.
Switch.
Yeah.
It actually is kind of cool, but also, I don't know. It felt like Journey a lot to me.
Fair enough.
So,
Yeah, I didn't see that one. My bad.
I've not understood why there's loot in that game. I haven't touched it though. So,
yeah, I don't know. I think like, generally these kinds of sort of steeped in mystery studios are the ones that are going to work best for this kind of deal, I think, because
Yeah.
the ability to kind of go dark and work on something without needing to generate a media cycle for it in the same way that publishers like EA and
No,
2K
I think
and Activision ask for. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think you want to generate a media thing. You don't need to do it like 6 months in advance. Or
That's what I mean, though, is
yeah. Okay, you don't need to do like the big E3 splashy presentation, but
No, right. That's what I'm saying is like, it'll be cool.
and you don't have to go around to like venture capitalists and investors.
Yeah,
You can just so,
drum up retail and stuff like that. Like this Remedy game can get like detailed and fleshed out and then come out a month later potentially, which is neat.
Okay, so they bring back Silicon Knights and Dennis Dyack.
Oh God, don't no.
Free human.
I mean,
No.
I'd cut somebody for Legacy of Kain.
Oh, yeah,
That's
totally.
a good. That would be a good get.
100%.
Every year when our E3 predictions come around, I say Soul Reaver.
Yep.
Yeah, that would be
it
good.
doesn't happen. That was it Crystal Dynamics? Is that
Yeah.
the studio? They tweeted out like a picture of Kane.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And they were like, "Hey, Amy Hennig."
And Amy,
Wanna-
yeah, I
you wanna
think
work
they
on
might have
Soul
been
Reaver.
literally trying to fish for Amy Hennig on Twitter, and she just didn't. Take
Wait,
the
is she
bait.
at Stadia now? Where is she? She went somewhere.
I think she's at Google. Yeah, she's at one of their internal studios, which
Well,
means that we'll never see her
That's gonna
write
get
another
shuttered, yeah.
project until Stadia closes in a year.
Yeah.
I also I had one. Now it's left me. Another good Epic get. Now I can't remember who it was.
Epic get.
An epic, yeah, an epic get. It'll come back to me, hopefully, maybe.
Beyond Good and Evil 2, steal it from Ubisoft.
Speaking of games that'll never come out,
Yeah.
That'll come out.
Epic should publish Star Citizen. That's what they should do.
Oh God.
Just
That
spend
get-
all the
Chris,
Fortnite money.
100% of the revenue or 100% of development covered, that game would never come out.
Chris
It's not
Roberts.
going to anyway.
Chris Roberts is doing just fine.
You know what? Studio Zom.
Whose studios?
Is that what it is? The Disco Elysium people?
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Give them money, please. That would be,
Zaum, whatever it was. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
yeah. That would be really cool. Yeah. I don't know. I would say studios like Double Fine and Obsidian, but
But they got bought.
yeah.
Bungie.
Oh God.
What's the team that made Xenoclash?
Xenoclash.
Can you imagine? Oh yeah. The
I'm scrolling through all the way to the bottom of my Steam library.
they have that cool looking game about rolling coming out.
Ace Team?
Ace Team.
Yeah, there we go. Rock of Ages, you mean?
No,
It's a game about
where
rolling.
that is also a game about rolling, but it's a game where you like
Soul Seraph?
I found it. The Eternal
the
Cylinder.
Eternal Cylinder. It's about it's a game where there's like this eternal cylinder that
Fuck.
rolls across the face of the planet, and you're this little like it looks like the what's the like legs and a round mouth.
Kirby.
No, not Kirby.
Mike
Pac-Man.
Mike Wazowski.
Sort of. Anyway, you're trying to like outrun this cylinder. It looks like it's a survival game, but you have to keep moving all the time because there's
An endless
this
runner?
giant there's like this giant storm chasing you all the time that's created by this massive
It's a battle
rolling cylinder.
royale.
That sounds perfect for that team. I love it.
You should look up the trailer. It looks awesome.
Colonel
It's so
Cylinder.
weird.
All right. Well,
Anyways,
that's everyone's homework.
Give them money. Make the Eternal Cylinder quadruple A. Oh,
Fortnite
Well-
featuring the Eternal Cylinder.
yeah.
There's your homework. Go watch the trailer for the Eternal Cylinder.
Watch
We're
Beast.
going to wrap up
Watch Beast.
this episode with Watch Beast Stars, I guess.
Oh, this game is so cool.
Make sure your parents aren't in the room. That's going to do it for episode 114 on March 28th, 2020. It's been a pleasure talking to you all.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you,
joining.
Jeff.
For joining us.
Anytime you're wanting to talk about games, we'd be happy to have you.
Yeah.
Aw,
We
thank
do it at the
you.
same time, same place, virtually.
Turn me into Linda Belcher.
Where can people find you if they want to hear your thoughts or read your thoughts or whatever, like social media or anything?
Oh, sorry. You're asking.
We're all laughing when you said, "Where can people
Oh,
find
so
you?"
yeah. Sorry. Jeff, where can people find your
yeah.
thoughts and stuff? if they
So-
want that?
You can find me most consistently on Twitter at Stranger Peace. So that's Peace, Peace. So at Stranger Peace. I'm actually also cooking up a podcast in the next couple of weeks because I'm horrifically bored and trapped.
That is a big mood.
Right. So there might be some stuff up there too. So yeah.
Right.
All right. You can find the Gaming Fix podcast at Fix Podcasts on Twitter and wherever fine podcasts are sold. Leave us a review if your podcast platform of choice allows that.
I think I said it last week too, but also just make an iTunes account and leave a review there.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It's
very helpful.
I think we've got 5 stars on iTunes.
Too nice
actually.
about this.
You can find
It's
me.
free.
You can find me, Andre Cole, aka your partner's favorite work from home tip, on Twitter at Coolslaw, COOLSL4W. Pat, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at PJC Plays.
And Allison?
You can find me on Twitter at WRITERSERENYTY.
And Alex.
On pornhub.com/users/COOLSL4W. So cool slaw.
And that's going to do it for this episode. Thanks, everyone, for joining me. And thanks for listening. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
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 Bye.